we only experience ourselves. We don't experience an objective reality. We experience the concepts, ideas, and thought forms that we are most comfortable with and the ones that we have become the most drawn to. That is what we're going to experience and have reflected back to us. So people who are going through these things and, having these blockages and stuff, what's not working? It's not that it's not working, it's that the frequency that you are still at, whether conscious or subconscious, is still in incongruency to what you're trying to experience.
Welcome to the Consciousness of the Way. I am your humble servant and seafood, Taoist Master Sanqing, and I have another amazing guest that seems to be my reality. Oh, it's good to be me. I want to welcome to the podcast Krys, who is a ether physicist or metaphysicist expert and a conscious creator, a channel, and also furthermore, the offering of the cosmic frequency that is a very sought out and well transferable, realized understanding of what reality or the nature of reality. I want to welcome to the podcast, Krys. How are you, my dear friend?
Thank you so much. And it's really awesome to meet another who is versed in, I would say, Eastern mysticism, if we could even call it that. Because myself as well, I tend to follow those spiritual teachings loosely, because I think at the end of the day, it's really our own inner guidance that is the leading faith, in our own lives. So I'm amazing. I'm excited about what I'm doing with Cosmic Frequency and the different projects we have going on, and an opportunity to share information, knowledge, and wisdom that can be translated into everyday life to make the experience much better for people while they're on the planet.
Amen to that, my brother. Amen. Now, what I would love you to do is just give the audience an abbreviated version of how you got here.
Yeah. So how did I get here? Is I had as a kid, I would always have the most supernatural experiences from meeting people in the physical, then having them disappear, objects appearing, um, abductions, along with just knowing things that kids my age just didn't know. And I was always into sports and athletic, but I always had this other side of me that I felt like couldn't really be answered in religion. I was raised Christian, and later on down the line, I realized I had this splinter in my mind where something wanted to be realized, but every time I would ask a pastor, a family member, they didn't really have the the answers. They couldn't satiate my craving to know truth or to experience truth is a better way to say it. And so I would have one supernatural experience after another, up into college. Things like my computer would turn on by itself in the middle of the night. I would see the mouse go click on a random YouTube song. I would have things coming through speakers. It was never anything scary. It was always very enlightening and elevating, these experiences. So I followed that path for a little bit of what is going on, what is God, what does this mean to me, and why is this happening to me? And when I started to ask those deeper questions about the nature of reality, that's when contact with my star family opened up. It's whenever I started to piece the pieces of the puzzle together and things started to make more sense. And I realized that I wasn't just here to, play the typical human game, that I was here to help people not play that game. But if they are going to play it well and know that you're playing it and how to get yourself out of it, if that's what you choose to do. So it's been a journey of self exploration, ET contact, interdimensional experiences, now birthed through what I call cosmic frequency, where I share these experiences and help people comprehend the nature of reality so that we can become self realized to a certain degree.
Booyah. I love it. I absolutely love it. I mean, it's so insightful when you start with the, inquiry and then curiosity, and furthermore, that derives a level of hope that turns
Yeah,
into a belief system that then can be realized as a knowing through the experience.
that's
And I
precisely it.
feel that your your understanding of these sort of like levels of what you would consider an ascended sort of state of awareness is the very nature of finding your path, as we call it, the Taoist rites, from a seeker to a knower. And within Taoism, we simplify things to the evidence of said all things represent within this reality a bellows. You're contracting and expanding at the same time. You're all things and nothing at the same time. Furthermore, through inquiry and that charge you're getting up your spine right now, that self-realized energetic oscillation is the very knowing of that expansive electric charge you get through your upper, what we call the upper dantian, is furthermore evidence of this. And, these are all sensory perceptions. This is the type of stuff that I've taken people on the magical mystery ride off for consciously over 32 years, the first time I channeled, and now deeper into it, coming across incredible beings like yourself. That is another validation of this seeking to knowing, and it comes in all forms. And so when we want to find our Death Star moment as a Taoist seeker, we bring our attention to the simplicity of that bellows. But we must also be mindful and realize that man is not like that. Man is mortal. And to cross over that realized state, which what we call is the point of no return, when you are able to access between the breath in and the breath out, the Wu Ji, and what we call the primordial mother. This is perfection manifest. This is realized. And once it is obtained through what you consider, and I notice you're using a bit of a lens of a physicist sort of perception of reality, so I'll ingrain it a little bit that way. Light to wave to matter to particle realizes your attention, intention, cutting from the cloth of perfection. You create what my dear friend, the Buddhist monk Martin, would call dukkha, distortion. It now is said evidence of the electromagnetism that we call this reality. This is the currency that you operate in. This is the very currency that is the polarizing effect of duality. And furthermore, to become unified, to be the primordial mother, to be no place, no person, no thing, the present moment, you must obtain it through this realization that comes with the cultivation and methods that we use within Taoist alchemy, deep within the nature of how we cultivate that. The primordial mother will show said evidence within the physical flesh, the architecture. The physical flesh determines the architecture of this electromagnetic spectrum. And from that, you will decipher that and obtain the Wu Ji. The Wu Ji will be evident in what some incredibly profound seeker of knowledge, Bruce Lee, coined as the flow, baby. And furthermore, as a Taoist, we call it Wu Wei.
Wu Wei. Yes.
Effortless effort. And that chart you're getting right now up your spine is evidence of how we are oscillating. We are dancing. We are communing with the unification of this knowing that you are me, I am you. We are one.
Yeah.
And beautiful, expansive moment of self-realization is not from thinking, my dear friend. If you're thinking, you're not knowing. If you are feeling, you are all knowing. And so from that, you create your self-realized experiential moment of now. This makes it yours. This makes it owned. Your truth, your reality is the only absolute truth you need to be concerned with.
Precise.
What say you, my dear friend? This is just the Taoist path.
Well, contrary to popular belief, the Taoist path or any other path is a branch of the path. And I would say I feel totally in alignment with a lot of the Taoist principles, if not all of them. It's actually, I know that I've had experiences in those lineages, and I still receive information from those times or from that time when I was an active participant in that culture. But something you said that is very, very important, and to summarize, is that form follows function, right? So as we are in that moment of stillness, in that moment of no thing, we arise something. But that something is, we could say, is the abstract or the negative image of the no thing. So we create light and dark, shadow and light, shadow and substance in the same moment. And what I find really beautiful with the Taoist traditions is the art of stillness. And where other practices like yoga, even qigong, which I practice daily, tai chi, there's a flow. There's movement. For me, that movement is an expression of what is realized and connected to in the stillness. So if you could give stillness, which is to me is a state, it's a principle, it's the all-defining, animating essence, what I call the ether. If it had an attribute, it would be defined by that which it seemingly isn't, which would be movement. So the stillness would be defined by the movement. Same as hot is defined by cold, up is defined by down. So bring this full circle. In that stillness, we are realized in ourselves as the movement that we see outside of us. It's the reflection of what's happening in here, right? So this way of being may sound super intricate and multi-layered, and it is, but it's also something that is attainable and accessible. It's not anything that is outside the lines of contemporary living, contemporary ways of thinking. I find in order to achieve one's, or let me just say, to begin the steps of progression of self-realization, because it never ends, you have to first know that it's possible, and to release the confines of the programs that reality has inundated one with. And a lot of those programs we have chosen intentionally before incarnating or before shifting our focus point to this, what we call life, which is just a file, F-I-L-E, L-I-F-E. Life is just a file in the greater cosmos. So, yeah, 7 hours may not be long enough for
Well, you're bringing so many great points when you start to step away from the mundane reality, perceived, said reflection of your identity, the flesh and blood that looks back at you in the mirror as human. The
Mhm.
human condition is the very construct and the limitation of your perception of the
That's
now
it.
moment,
That's
reality.
yeah.
And so then furthermore, we go back to the bellows. The
Hmm.
bellows is contracting and expanding, just as through your own admission, we can refer to that state where you are still. The still is the primordial mother. That stillness will acquire a self-realized knowing through a repeatable experience. This is where the method is so very much enriching the path of the seeker, from the seeker to the knower. That's why Taoist alchemy, in my opinion, and yes, I'm a Taoist priest ordained in 2 lineages of Taoism, and I'm a fanboy. The truth is second to none when it comes to being able to be have imperium over this substance.
Well, you need to, if I may, you need to, because what
Mm.
you're saying is really important. There is a missing link, if you will, between knowing and being, and even to actualization of the being. One, two, three, Trinity, right? So there needs to be a kind of gauging point where it can become tangible. I think a lot of people in their journey, their spiritual path becomes intangible. They don't think there's nothing to really um, settle with. It's not integrated, right? So that's why I love the art of qigong and other martial arts, because there's a even we could say a linear, non-linear functionality to it. It's repeatable. You can experience it. And that's why I take the physicist approach, as ether physics is not just this invisible energy, it is a concept that can be experienced through shape power, through understanding how this primordial substance, if we could even call it a substance, operates. It's something that can be studied. So yeah, I had to share that.
No, I completely agree with you. This is why Taoist alchemy is second to none in this material.
Mm,
And so when furthermore people are seeking, you go start with the inquiry, to the curiosity, to the hope that develops a belief system that is self-realized, self-actualized within the experience. And
mm,
then it's validated. So once you have access, you have an imperium over these 50 trillion cells with 0.07 electric potential.
mhm.
Once that is materialized and is validated, this is the things that I teach people within the alchemical process, the crystalline merging of platinum, gold, and silver, not as elements on a periodic table, but within you at a substance level from the electromagnetism that creates the
Mhm.
infrastructure of your reality. And
Yes.
by birthing that, you burn it into as tangible as is your physical flesh, will be the alchemical process, and you can merge electric and magnetic together. You can separate it,
Hmm.
everything from something that would be superhuman, which some people call supernatural, instantly accesses that primordial mother, which we consider the Wu Wei. When someone asks me, how are you? I always respond with the same answer. It's good to be me. And
Mm,
when you understand this, you're having synchronistic, serendipitous moments every single second of every minute of your reality as you perceive the contracting and expanding of the bellows. You realize you're all things and nothing at the same time. That means, from my dear friend Tom Campbell, who has a theory of reality, he conceives it as the large consciousness system. And by realizing you are contracting and expanding at the same time, you have options. Is your
yes.
glass half empty or full? This
Hmm.
is the very evidence. And through that material, you create that power. That charge that you're getting right now, my dear friend, that oscillating effect that you and I are having is part of what would be more of a lens of contention for people that are seeking these sort of sensory perceptions. But this is a myth until realized as a knowing through the
Exactly.
substance. And so when I move my hands and you feel it oscillating through your body, this is the evidence that it is real, and it would be considered under a parapsychologist perception what we can categorize as psychokinesis. And
Hmm.
so furthermore, through inquiry, through discovery, through knowing, I developed these skills through the teachings of Nigong, which is basically internal power, from Nidan, which is the internal alchemy. And then that is realized as your substance and knowing. And through that, you create manifestation, magic, healing, these things that seem more like folk tales or mythological creatures or experiences that could be something that cannot be validated because you're in a psychosis instead of your psychic abilities being validated. So no longer is the psychotic sort of like delusional state that I truly believe the understanding of psychology or psychology being offered over the last couple of hundred years is to separate you from said self.
Of
This
course.
is the
Yes.
understanding that things are not happening in your mind. You are all things. Yet, once that's constructed within a conscious and unconscious process, you must have a method to detach and then attach
Yes.
as the now moment, which
Yes.
is what we call the point of no return. And
Yes.
once that's realized, your attention, intention, your mind is now everything. That means if you think it, it becomes realized. It's no longer some sort of way to, hey, let's go sleep paralysis, OBEs, NDEs. All these types of things are variables. But truth said, once you are the now moment, the primordial Wu Wei, everything is realized instantaneously
Bingo.
through the
Yes.
substance.
And this is, and I'm really grateful to be having this conversation because this is the level of awareness that is required to truly transcend into a, I would say, more advanced people. And when I have a group on Telegram called Star Walkers. It's a Star Walker support, and we're talking about astral travel and all these things. And I just posted in there this morning. Funny you bring it up, that there is no astral as such. There is no over there and here as such. These are different, seemingly different states of the one principle. And once you, that point of no return that you talk about, once you touch that, once you become aware, once you are realized as that, travel, distance, space, time, it's here. There's nowhere to go because there's nowhere to be other than what you choose. And it's a matter of where your perception is. You're only going to experience the amount of data that you're allowing yourself to validate, right? And so we like to draw out these steps. We like to draw out, okay, step 1, step 2, step 3. Yes, there's a methodology within that can be repeatable. But what I love to do, and you touched base on it a little bit earlier, is when you go, if you take I don't know, I have this beautiful crystal here, right? And you were to just continue to go inward into this crystal, it would go back into its pure state, which is nothing. It would go back into the nothing. So each cell, each fabric that gives this crystal its shape and its form is simply oscillating the vibratory rates of the one. And for me, that's where I want people to, not want, but I invite people to start to look at reality from. We can't look at it from an external hard matter state, because the external hard matter is the validation of something that is behind and within it. So another example is if you're baking a cake and someone has never made a cake before, you hand them the cake and you say, here, I want you to make this cake. They need to know the ingredients, that are behind and within that give rise to what we call cake. So through cosmic frequency, through we are on very similar wavelengths through this conversation.
It's showing self-evidence of your incarnation, reincarnation as a Taoist seeker through this lens. And we merge this, we unify this. I mean, the biggest decipherer of anyone's curiosity comes in this universal symbol they call yin and yang. The answers are all within.
I just did
the answers are all within the Vesica point, the center point, yes, which we call Wu Ji. Mm-hmm. So if you identify and merge within the simplicity of the bellows, and then you take further curiosity and inquiry to the breath, between the breath in and the breath out lies the Wu Ji. And that still point, as you reference it, is the substance. You will instantly have a self-realization that there is this palpable, tangible evidence of now. Yes. Now, how you master that and create from this primordial mother, you must be void of the human condition. That does not mean you erase your personality. You're able to now master all states at once, at will, with this Imperium. Then it becomes realized.
Yes. Ooh, that's so good. And not denying. Let me pause. Because to access that point, that stillness, the place of no return, the 0 point, as some would say, is to let go for a brief moment, not delete, not erase, but let go of the awareness of what we've thought ourselves to be. So I have to go beyond the traditional framework of my being, where some would say the breath in. I have to go release. So if this is not that I am, if this is not the foundation of my being, and I go beyond it, then I get to experience something that is that tangible, the tangibleness of the essence that births this. And that's what people have to um, notice here is it's about integration. They say love is the highest frequency, but I disagree. I think integration is,
Mm.
because when you
Ah,
integrate, you allow you make something that you think is else a part of you. You see yourself as whole. You're integrated, and then is that not love? So we integrate the identities that we have experienced. You know, I integrate Krys, I integrate San as reflection of the same self. And so now we're getting a much broader awareness of what we really are, seeing that stillness in the tree, in the deer, right? Seeing that stillness in the sun, feeling the stillness from the stars. It's all there. It's here, always and always.
I would agree, and also beg the inquiry of deconstruction,
Mm-hmm.
because you are the now moment. To be the now moment, you must have evidence of that. To be able to access it and have it repeatable in the form of manifestation, magic, healing. Now, if I take a skewer, run it through my arm, which is a party trick I love to do, pull it out, and there's no entry or exit point,
Yeah.
you are in query. You are in inquiry of what the was that?
Mm-hmm.
How was that possible? So these deeper states of what I blanket as sensory perception starts with what would be conceived as the human condition, the limitations of this flesh and blood, which is part of the currency of electromagnetism. So when you decipher that man is mortal, the bellows is abundant, timeless, endless, limitless, infinite. There is no end to contracting and expanding. To identify as said self would be a
That's right.
limitation. The
Yep.
physical flesh is a limitation. So, how do we acquire this knowing of the primordial mother, this now moment where you're no place, no person, no thing?
Mm-hmm.
The imperium is the mind, but the mind is not separate. You are instantly, you affect change. That
Mm-hmm.
means that we are speaking in the third person, but in reality, there is no such thing. Whenever I witness a physical healing, and I've been doing that for the last 30 years, from the first time I ever watched Gangrea's flesh turn back to pink in color in 40 minutes, that
Mm-hmm.
was my entry level. Go past $200 and I'm hooked. I need this stuff. This is my reality. And furthermore, channeling my teacher Lao Tzu within the same breath over 32 years ago, I have many insights. Some people would acquire this as what we call source, Akashic records, holds of mente. However you see it, you will find it within this dialogue. So I have my teacher that I commune with on a second by second basis. I don't claim to be have any evidence of any intellect or knowing. I'm as dumb as rocks, but his information that transmutes through me does make me seem as though I have a little handle on what the nature of reality is. Furthermore, when you experience the visceral, kinesthetic, somatic response of a transmission from Lao Tzu, and I do enjoy doing that, direct contact and transmuted state where the immortal spirit and energy presents itself through my physical flesh. Now, there are many different versions of what people call channeling these days. This is the highest level of ascension for a Taoist. The path is very clear. It starts with the physical body, the energetic body, the spiritual body, the sun body, the earth body, the moon body, the oneness body, the ultimate body, and then being with all things as
Mm-hmm.
now.
That's what I
That
was.
charge, as I ascended through that, you were like, aha, thank you, sir. May I have another? Yes. This is my Oliver Twist moment where you want more, boy. Oh, yes, I want more. As the inquiry, we create elementary, my dear Watson. Your short,
Mhm.
your Watson becomes realized.
Right.
This is the power. Now, I'm an old school OG from the 80s. That's one of my favorite decades. So I do the Pepsi challenge with anyone. I will do the Pepsi challenge with anyone. Show me what it is. And this is conceptually where you are realized from my filter, my sensory perception as a knowing because of what you speak of from a linguistic perspective at a subatomic level, has substance, it has charge, it has evidence of knowing. So it doesn't matter what you say, you must be able to experience it. So furthermore, people gravitate to said scripture, insight, path, method. Methodology, in my opinion, is the offering and the key and the answer to your self-realization. Without it, there's no repeatable moment. 30 years ago, when I was a young priest, people would come to me with what they were diagnosed as a psychotic episode. Furthermore, the rituals that I'm taught in give you this evidence of this electromagnetism. You go deeper into your mind and you create your belief system. From that belief system, you will have good and bad, even though that doesn't exist within Taoism. It's either yin or yang. Yet the perceived idea of reality will come from this good and bad. That is your personality creating what you perceive as a belief system. Furthermore, this is where we have an override of that, and the psychotic episode presents itself. Now, 30 years ago, I would do an exorcism on them, and they'd be on their merry way, and they would be found. Now, when exorcism, that's to exercise what is a stagnant frequency within this physical. It doesn't have to allude to or be said evil demonic frequency, yet it can be. It depends on how much you frame your reality.
Yes.
These are amen, brother. These days, what happens is I get someone who wakes up and goes, I'm channeling the Palladians, opens up a YouTube channel, gets 100,000 followers. This is how much has changed in 30 years. And this is really a said evidence of the raising of this frequency, this frequential, it's all frequential.
Yeah.
This is the currency that we work with. So to pass no return, to collect your $200, you have to be able to replicate and resonate the frequency of the primordial mother, then furthermore show evidence of that through your abilities to manifest, create, heal, things that are within this currency as what would seemingly be supernatural. When you bring the unified state, as you referred to it, the 0 point, furthermore, this goes deeper. If you even follow someone who's a self-proclaimed physicist by the name of Nassim Haramein, he has a very
Nassim. That's so
cool. And so he has a very interesting insight. This is a very ancient Taoist knowing, right? So I teach people that alchemical process, which is called the death of a star, the raising of the red phoenix, and the expansion of black hole energy. This is ancient. This is generational. This is thousands and thousands of years old that burn in the activation of your internal alchemy and your energetic infrastructure. These are things that are now being validated by said self-physicist Nassim. He's talking about the black hole energy. This is a different frequency. This is not electromagnetism. As you hit the event horizon of a black hole, you have what some people have defined as a scalar wave, the 0 point, the superglue within what we perceive as the entanglement. Furthermore, this is the stuff that Albert Einstein said, the spooky action, that shit is real, bending reality.
That's what the ether is. Yes. This is beautifully said. First off, beautifully said. Secondly, this is exactly what is taught in ether physics. This is why my main body of work is ether physics. Everything starts there. You can't have anything without the comprehension of the fundamentals. So I walk people through to have these experiential moments very simply. If we think about the soul, what is a soul? And in this lifetime, I've studied all the things, a lot of the things, right? But I always come back to the self. What is it? If I throw all that away, what is left? So my findings, the reason I call it cosmic frequency is because I feel like a lot of the information I'm bringing comes from that 0 point, that beyond time, space, the ether. So when you take if you have a thought right now, we're thinking, we're speaking. Right now, we're creating a vortex. We're creating a standing wave, if you will, and that's going to give. It's going to have its specific pulse, specific rhythm in what we call the field, the medium. You can tap into that if you have the right instrumentation. You can literally tap into the frequency that we're creating here, and you can replicate it with technology, not on this planet. Um, Maybe hidden in some bunkers, but not in the general population. But if people want to experience the grander nature of reality, I feel like one of the best ways to do that, to get that experiential knowing, is through meditation, is through deep self analysis. A lot of times, whenever I sit and meditate, not a lot, almost every single time, my body, I don't feel it anymore. Like, I go to that point where there's nothing, and in that nothingness, I then start to be able to perceive something, and I realize that I'm aware of the changes of my brain waves. And whenever I go deeper and deeper and deeper, I just start to know things. And I bring that information back and I make a post about it and I share it with, in the work I do. Now, how is that possible? How is that possible? It's possible because we are the ether. We are that source. We are that essence of the black hole. That is truly the us, the the unidentified us. So when we let go, when we go into that point of quietness, observation, we start to shift our brain waves, and now all the information that is just abundant there can be accessed. So you speaking to Lao Tzu, which happens to be one of my most favorite beings of all time, and I often wondered if I was
Right.
around during his
Yeah.
incarnation.
Well, I just transcribed the Tao Te Ching 2024
Yeah.
with his, communing with him, and it's in English and it's in Pinyin and Mandarin, and furthermore, we refer to that as the magical register.
Wow.
So this is insight. Every verse is not a verse; it's an incantation. It's a living
Mhm.
scripture. This
Wow.
is where lies the magic. Each incantation has 81 levels of consciousness realization. It comes with a frequency, a color, and a shape. And
Mm.
you go deep on that stuff. The second you lay your eyes on it, the visceral, somatic, kinesthetic response
And that's
within
ether physics.
will be realized
Wow.
immediately, because that is the said substance, as you say, self. To have imperium, you must be dissolved of any identity. But
Exactly.
furthermore, you must be able to, at a certain point, the point of no return means that all this currency is realized. It doesn't matter. If you are, once you access the substance and you can repeat it, you can cultivate it. This is what we call the Wu Ji, which
Mhm.
is between the breath in and the breath out. This is the hold point. So when you hold it, you are what we call gathering the riches, absorbing the riches, and it transmutes instantly into what we identify as chi packing, which is more said evidence of the energetic potential, and it becomes realized within this barometer, this tuning fork of the physical flesh, and you
Mhm.
go, holy crap, this is now.
Right.
And this is the simplicity of it. You furthermore, you stay away from thinking. Your feeling is your knowing. And that's where people get a little confused or distorted, because there is no thought process. When you are in servitude, when you are selfless, there's nothing at all that inspires you from your mind. You are a doer. You are extending yourself. So to be all things and nothing at the same time, the point of no return to obtain the Wu Ji, it will come in that form. So once you're there and you are working with the architecture, the energetic architecture, what happens is you will literally, you think it happens. So it
Mhm.
doesn't matter if it comes in the form of what you perceive as is the currency of this electromagnetism. If you're depressed, you're happy, you're sad, you're any of the above, you're something, you're nothing, it still translates into that now moment of unification. So that means that all of a sudden, it doesn't matter if you're depressed, it doesn't matter if you're happy, because it transmutes into that same unified state. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense, and that's a wonderful thing to access. It makes perfect sense because you're going beyond the thinking mind. You're going beyond the parameters and the filters and the limitations and the rights and wrongs. You're going to the source. That's it. And that space is going to permeate, and it just is. And you think of
It has,
uh-huh.
yeah, yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead. I was just going to say it has to be. It has to be self-evident.
Yes.
My truth is not your truth. If someone comes to you with an absolute truth, about face and run in the other direction. The only absolute truth is your truth.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that will be self-realized. And that substance is the currency. People dismiss it. They're like, oh, I ascend to a higher level and, I just don't feel any place present. That's nonsense. The substance becomes even more dense than you can even imagine. And it's a currency that you can work with at will to create anything that you desire. And your desirous will come from the crossing a point of no return, and that desire will come in the form of servitude and selflessness. Just because people play in energy, and I get dozens of people every day coming to me. I want to learn. I had this Kundalini awakening. Now, listen, I appreciate this Kundalini. They use it as a terminology. Listen, I've traveled the world. I've trained thousands of people. I've trained under said masters. I've only come across 3 people that possess this Kundalini awakening. 2 are Indonesian, deep in the Indonesian jungles, masters that have devoted their life to the cultivational practice. They, I witnessed with my own eyes, levitate. Now, the 3rd is one of my students I taught to levitate. Now, well, people go, well, Juffa, what? Well, why aren't you levitating? What does that mean? Because it doesn't get me excited. What excites me is physical, mental, emotional, spiritual healing. And it comes in that form, and it comes instantaneously. Now, all these things that we call superpower, supernormal stuff, this can be acquired by anyone. I find that I can find people that are, very well versed and mastered in energy potential, but spiritually they're just assholes. They are not ascended to a wisdom teacher level that is what we call within Taoism my dialogue with my teachers, where I see them as I see you. I experience them as I experience your presence. This frequency, and this is funny because when I have people at my temple, I'm in my temple right now, they have experiences. All right, it doesn't matter where you are in the world. It's just frequency. But when you have an immortal energy potential move through your physical body with your eyes open and you go, WTF, how is that possible? You freak out. You change. There's nothing but change at a subatomic level because you're exposed to a frequency that is beyond this electromagnetic spectrum.
Exactly.
These are all evidence-based things for the seeker to become the knower. And without these, you become in this transitory state. Now, there is no permanency, yet there is permanency. The paradox of the deciphering of yin and yang. The Vesica point, the center point, the primordial mother is what we perceive from the void, the darkness that is the primordial mother, seeds the concentrated form of yang within the primordial womb that creates the hardness of perfection manifest, the diamond, that through the cycle of 9, you create life itself. And there, from conception to creation, you are now realized. The magic of that is evident and is self-realized. Just in that, in of itself. Forget about all the magical stuff and the Miyagi experiences. You are witnessing a miracle.
Yeah.
Before your very eyes. And this is how the oscillating effect between primordial mother and then the reflection of the primordial mother within this currency is the yang energy. And so now all of a sudden you see the decipherer, the yin and yang is given to you. That's all you need, the bat signal that will give you everything that you desire within that. But
Yeah.
as you have said, the center point is everything has energy potential. This cup has a center point. This bottle has a center point. You have a center point. And this becomes more realized as you ramp up your sensory perception, that what I teach is radiesthesia, or what is more commonly known as psychometry. There are other elements of that. Taoist training is deep within what we call body dowsing. So you become the tuning fork, and you're able to identify everything from power centers to ley lines to vortices, and you are using this, even though it's coined within a psychological hypnotic transfer of information. We call this ideomotor response. So ideomotor is a transmutation of, and this is within all my friends who are parapsychologists and physicists and psychologists, and they want more and more evidence within their little crunching of numbers. That's fine. So ideomotor is basically, yeah, well, ideomotor is coined by some guy back in the 1800s as evidence of divinity. That transmutation throughout the physical flesh will give you said response. So a lot of my friends that are remote viewers, some of the best in the world, they've worked on many programs deep within government agencies to other things. Ideograms is a relationship or a language that you create with your unconscious. So these are divinity or divine tools to help you find the crumbs, and you become the Sherlock to your Watson. And when you use these, it comes in that transmuted form of the ideomotor. So more commonly, people use pendulums, Ouija boards, tarot cards, dowsing forks, all this kind of stuff. Now, you will get a transmission, but I will not caution, but make people aware of this inquiry, that within that, if your regulated state of alignment is off from the energy potential, which is the substance of all things within this currency of material, you must be aware that if you're misaligned and you start this journey, that it will be more limited by your personality and your worldview, your belief system, than actual divine knowing, which is what you refer to. And so these are a good starting tool, but people find, it kind of works, muscle testing, whatever, here and there, because you have to work out
exactly
the workings. Everything must align, everything must be regulated, and this type of stuff may come in the form of what people consider this new age language they call heart math or whatever, coherence. I'm not a big fan of that. It's kind of luxury. You know what I'm saying.
I do, and I'm so glad that you mentioned the new age and everything, because that's what you're speaking of is something that is timeless. This is as long as there is a Lyran humanoid form, this is going to work, and it's worked for eons. And everything that's coming out now, whether it's with this new age stuff, is, in my opinion, a big distraction, and it's wrapped up in a nice little bow to paint a narrative to get people away from experiencing and becoming their own tuning fork, right? And so, what part of
that's the hijacking of parasite.
Exactly.
And with tiki, gin, there potentially, as Bob Monroe calls it, the loosh. There's an energetic potential that will be vacuous, and you can instantly identify as a Sherlock this vacuous moment, that it is not of a high level of ascension. So when you're channeling, as you are a said channeler, there is a very evidence, and I've got probably at least 100 dear friends that are channelers, and it's like there's one common universal understanding. When you transmit this information, it comes from above and transcends into the physical flesh. And this seems to be a consensus. Now, I'm not going to say that there's only one way up the mountain. There's a million ways up the mountain. But I'm an old school OG channeler for over 30 years. And when I transmute Lao Tzu's very essence through my physical flesh, how I determine that for anyone in doubt is I'll light a flame and put it under my hand and leave it there and then pull it off, and there's no damage to the flesh because
Mm.
this is not from this currency.
Yeah.
And people come to that realization. That charge you got is a realization. This is and there are many people that get insight. This is where you get variables of what sensory perception is. Okay, there's 5 senses to the human perception of reality. I can say something and you can think it, say it, and see it in your mind. There's 3 more. Boom. Okay, we're off to the races. There's 8. Let's go for it. Let's start realizing that there is no limitation. The portal
Right.
to this realization is your imagination.
That's
And
it.
if someone cannot create this effect that becomes substantive, that becomes tangible, then we must look at the deficiency or the irregularity within your own system so that you bring it back to whole, so that then you all of a sudden, and I've done this thousands of times, the second someone who says, Mo, I'm a listener, I'm a feeler, I'm a seer, all these senses, they're the baseline of them, result in when you regulate, they're all as powerful, they're all equal.
Mm-hmm.
None are more excessive or deficient, where a lot of people get a taste of something and they're like, oh, I saw an apparition, I heard grandma, I had a vivid dream, I had an OBE, I saw, witches and goblins, and, this is great, but now bring it here so it can be tangible,
That's
make
the
it realized.
that's
Other
the
than that, you're just bantering this propaganda that
right.
is more in your mind than actually realized in this realm. And
Exactly.
that's how I see it.
I agree. And people are only going to, we only experience ourselves. We don't experience an objective reality. We experience the concepts, ideas, and thought forms that we are most comfortable with and the ones that we have become the most drawn to. That is what we're going to experience and have reflected back to us. So people who are going through these things and, having these blockages and stuff, what's not working? It's not that it's not working. It's that the frequency that you are still at, whether conscious or subconscious, is still in incongruency to what you're trying to experience. So if you want to experience something, if you want to actualize, you have to allow yourself to be at that vibration. I like to use the example where, this is just an example, but if we have a mountain and someone's sitting at the foot of that mountain, they're only going to have the perceptional range of what's at the foot of the mountain. So to them, that looks like one reality. Let's say in a day or two, they climb up to the top of the mountain and it looks completely different. They can see over all this vast land. They're going to say, oh, made it to whatever dimension. No, you didn't. You are still within the same framework of the totality, albeit you're viewing from a different vantage point now. And I'm speaking to the wholeness and the totality that is reality. And people are only seeing where they are at, and there's no limit. And so whether it's self-healing, channeling, um, whatever else, we are only going to get that which we think that we can. And so the limitations that we experience as humans, especially in this realm, on this earth, are self-imposed. The soul is not a thing that can be controlled and put over here or dropped off over there. The soul is an idea in the field, in the source. And so what that means is there's no limit. When we incarnate or have a perceived limited experience, what we're doing is we're attaching ourselves to a set of ideas, beliefs, ideologies, and principles. Those become self-defining and self-regulating. Now, at any time, we can choose to broaden that perspective and then now assimilate more information, knowledge, and wisdom, and that then becomes part of the greater experience of what we call us. So I I absolutely love the fact that you have this background because I think connecting with you is a full circle for me on a deeper spiritual level because of my natural draw to the Eastern mysticism. So this is a very cool full circle, and things like teleportation, levitation. Um, I love it all. I'm actually in the midst of navigating those experiences as well as direct um, reflections of the consciousness. So it's so funny how you keep alluding to things. I'm like, yep, yep, I'm right there with you.
Yeah, I mean, I experienced I got a fast forward realization over 30 years ago of my said self and realized within a matter of moments,
Hmm.
at a very young age, 19 or 20, I was given full force into inquiry about meditation. Never knew about it. I spent the between the age of 10 and 20 obsessed with powerlifting and bodybuilding.
Really,
Grew through a gorilla state, over 300 pounds, deadlifting 800 pounds, stupid supernatural things that
wow.
would not be obtained without what they perceive or they speak on today as PEDs, for furthermore, what they call performance enhancing drugs. I was using the power of my mind and my belief system
And
as a
see, that's right there. Now, do you see? I'm so glad you said this because the parallels here, all that the external world can do is emulate and try its best to simulate what the consciousness can do. So you achieved a state of being physically that would was out of the electromagnetic framework of others, but you did it. It's not that it's not possible, it's that they didn't have the bandwidth, information, or know-how even to be able to obtain that 0 point, that stillness point that got you to then be able to actualize your mind.
well, yeah. I mean, once you accept, as my one of my teachers is very clear, when you accept you know nothing, you know everything. I approach everything in a childlike state. It's at face value.
Hmm.
So when I approached that, at the age of 10, I picked up the Education of a Bodybuilder by Arnold Schwarzenegger, and I believed that everything he said in that book was real.
Sure.
And by doing that,
You
I
created.
created my very godlike, mythical,
Oh, that's so cool.
Greek-like state of pure essence of testosterone, a pure essence of masculinity, and it
Wow.
was formed from that seed. And I
And that
had no interruption or distortion of the interpretation, which then turned into reality, which
exactly.
was that moment.
And see, and through the lens of ether physics, I would say it like this. So you read that book and those words, just like the writing you just did with Lao Tzu. In that book by Arnold is a set of frequencies that hold a specific encryption. Everything holds its own encryption. Every single thing that you see is nothing but a series of waves, a series of repeating pulse rhythms. That's all it is. We see it as linear and as physical because that's how the brain interprets that series of waves. But it's not physical. What we deem physical is really the result of of magnetism. You have two like poles. You push them together, it's gonna seem like they're gonna repel. Carrying on with my point, so you're reading the book. You created within your mind a Taurus field that became a standing wave. That standing wave now has the encryption of the frequency harmonics of what was written in that book, that then became a thought pattern, which again is another Taurus standing wave that then was experienced as your external reality. And so you tapped into ether physics, which is really just thought power. Beliefs are the structuring of the ether to give a result that reflects the beliefs. So it's again that yin and yang, that breath to inhale with the seed that holds it all together.
The Wu Ji, the
The Wu
primordial.
Ji. Do you see?
You refer to the toroidal field. This is an interesting realization. We refer to it as the Taurus field, the
Yeah.
celestial heat. This
The
is a
what?
celestial. It's referred to as the celestial heat within Taoism, and so
Oh,
this is a
interesting.
cycle of yin and yang. This is the oscillating merging. The vesica is the center point. When
Yes.
the primordial mother reflects through the essence and creates the sun projects its frequency to Mother Earth, and from the magnetic pull of the earth itself, you are creating the center point from the light spectrum of the rainbow, and the rainbow center point is the heart, the pink and red center. And so when people refer to indigenous practices and they call for the enlightenment of the rainbow body, this is dead evidence, but it must be realized through a methodology. 99% of people I come across are full of shit. They don't know how to train in it. Fortunately, I am said evidence that there is that realization. You must be able to master this. This is part of the experience, because this gives hope and then self-realized belief systems that create knowing from the experience.
Yes.
Without that is nothing more. Belief systems come and go all the time.
Thank
It
you.
must
Yes,
be
they do.
solidified within the knowing that is critical to your self-realization. And so when you merge those two, that evidence is in everything. That oscillating yang and yin essence is there. That vesica point, the center point, the primordial mother, the Wu Ji, is within everything. It's accessing it. Once you access it, you must now be able to repeat it. By repeating it, you then have evidence of what we call Wu Wei, effortless action, effortless effort, which then resides in what we have defined as energy. The energy has vibration, the vibration has frequency. The frequency, if met with resonance, oh, yes, it will be yours. Oh, yes, it will. And that is how it's realized. You must hold the line. If you do not have the internal alchemy, the container, this said physical flesh, your constitution is reliant on what you came into this world with. We define that within Taoism as Jing. Your pure essence is what would someone be, your hereditary disposition of your DNA, what comes from your lineage, your family, your background. This is nothing more than a transitory thought. It does not become realized. When I mention to people their constitution, it's like a battery. You come into this world and you have a battery. I've never yet consciously in 30 years seen someone at 100%. What you do within the internal alchemy that I teach people is your battery's at 80% out of 100. You use the alchemical process to bring your battery to 100%. You take it from 100 to 1,000, from 1,000 to 9,000. Then you become realized by a path of no return that is that center point. And then you never, ever tap into this physicality. This is an anchor. You want to fortify it with that constitution. And so then you tap into that center point, and never will you ever again be, oh, I had a long day, I'm exhausted. It doesn't exist, because you are abundant, timeless, endless, limitless, infinite. That is the true nature of all things. Oh, yes, my friend. Hallelujah. You know exactly what I'm talking about.
I know precisely. And it's refreshing to talk to someone who knows that principle of being, because I do see it as a principle, as a foundational comprehension of being. And back in the day, times, I'm not talking about this lifetime, but back in the day, from whenever I was frolicking around in different star systems and even places here, this kind of way of being, it's just how it is. And whenever you come into a realm like Earth, because see, my brain wants to go here and here. Whenever you come into a realm like Earth, you are dropped into the soup of everyone else's thoughts and feelings and ideas, da, 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 da. And so you become assimilated to this way of being. What you just spoke of is not common for this place. It's not. It might be saved for a specific groups of people who have held those traditions close to heart. But traditionally speaking, to able to operate from a place of I'm good, I'm okay, truly okay, tired, no, hungry, no. this takes a deep level of self mastery. Definitely not impossible. One that I'm currently exploring, and it becomes fun when you have kiddos running around and everything. But then again, that's just another narrative, right? Uh,
Oh, congratulations. How many kids do you have?
Four total, so three full time, well, two
Oh,
4 times. So yeah,
fantastic. I'm a father of 6 myself.
are you? So you know. So here we meet again. The
And they're
reflection.
all versed in, you start with the infantile crawling of understanding conscious and unconscious. Every child I have is between the age of 12 and
Mm,
1. All of them from 3, 5, 8, 10, and 12 all started with just having a self-realization, and I teach them the fundamentals of hypnosis because this is at entry level. And
right.
once you understand that, you can start to really master your focus attention, realize that to merge that consciousness as one is frequential. And that
Oh, so
frequential, I
good.
have never ever witnessed a physical healing, which I've seen thousands of them over and over again as an observer. The physical healing does not take place, and I'm not measuring it in. I think there was a guy by the name of Hawkins, David something, Stephen Hawkins. He
Yeah,
had this measure of a spectrum of consciousness. I would beg to have a conversation if he was still present. I could have it to him. I can have it with him in the spirit world. The reality is that type of measure of hurt frequency is not relevant because I have once I hit a gamma brainwave, which is 40 hertz and above. Normally, when I'm channeling or healing, it's between 100 and 400 hertz. I witness physical healings all day long. I don't want to dismiss it, but it's a dime a dozen. It's very easy to obtain
yeah.
that as you hit that gamma brainwave. And the reason I say that, and I use that as a reference point, is because I've been measuring my brainwaves for years, but
I have a question.
out
I
of curiosity, and this is where you see the physical healing.
yes.
So when I was referring to back in the day when I went from the physicality to my path as a Taoist priest,
Hmm.
that merging was there was a voice in my head that said, "Inquiry, go and find meditation." And I was like, I'm a gorilla. I pick things up, I crush them, I throw them. It had no sense to me. And so in those days, you have rotary phones, you don't have the internet, information is limited. And furthermore, it went from go and find this meditation class that a grandmaster was, this little Asian woman was a grandmaster in the middle of some rec center in the middle of nowhere that I considered some type of ghetto-like situation where I was in fear of my own life when I got there. And I pulled up to the parking lot. I went inside and I thought, I'm not going to make it back outside. I'm hearing dogs barking, screaming. The whole thing was like, it's a distraction
I
to
hear
my
it.
idea. And I had a perceived idea that the stillness was necessary. When you realize that it's nothing more than entering what you consider the ether, or as you said, the 0 point, we call it the primordial mother.
Mhm.
This evidence was so sobering because I'd never meditated before. So I sat down there like a gorilla in a room full of half a dozen misfits. Beggars can't be choosers. I'm looking around the room. I'm hearing all this shit. I'm probably going to get destroyed. I'm not going to make it to my car. And this little Asian woman, when she's standing, she's up to my eyes, and I'm hunched over like a gorilla. And I'm like, this is
You
not going
could
to work.
feel her presence, couldn't you?
Oh, yeah, of course you can.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can feel that when I speak it, you know it to be true because you're experiencing the substance.
Hmm.
This
Hmm.
is not a figment of my imagination. This is not a long two story. This is actualized and realized. And that, through your sensory perception, you know is the truth. Now, when I sat there, I was like, my back was aching. I was distracted. I had this idea that meditation was mindfulness and stillness and all this kind of stuff. In those days, in the 80s, it was Hare Krishnas, yogis,
Yeah.
reference to Gandhi. I mean, I was like, this is kind of nonsensical for me because I'm a material guy. I crush things. I
Yeah.
show said evidence of that by lifting heavy weight. I hadn't realized from a bodybuilder, powerlifter perspective. So I sat there and I'm like, I'm going to give myself 5 more seconds. I'm distracted by the dogs barking, people screaming, ambulances, the whole thing outside. And this woman stands there in the center of this like half circle of a couple of misfits. And she goes, now listen to my voice. And I'm like, okay, my eyes are open. And I'm like hunched over. And she goes, listen to my voice. And then everything will fall away. And what happened after that was she said, everything will fall away. And I'm just like this. My eyes are open wide, conscious, and there's still, I can't hear a thing. For 15 minutes, I held that resonance and everything disappeared. And then it slowly advanced and then progressed back to the tempo of what was around me. But that was like, whatever that is, I want it. And I want it now. That's the most powerful thing I've ever experienced in my life.
That is absolutely beautiful, because not only is that a testament to the power of transformation, but it's also backing the findings in Taoism and even in ether physics, that everything is frequency and it's based in that. So let's just look at, you come in with a specific mindset of what this stuff is, right? You had never done any kind of thing like that. There was that field.
Little did I know that I was doing that the whole time.
Precisely, right?
From a childlike state.
Yes, but you just didn't have that external reflection back to you to validate and verify your experience. And so that becomes just kind of a subconscious programming that never really gets lived out until you get put into an atmosphere of like frequency. So what she did was she reflected back to you what was dormant within you. What I also heard whenever you were speaking was that you came in and you were a gorilla and you were lifting heavy things to verify your experience. But then I also associated that with, but what she did was help you lift your spirit. It was help you realize the tremendousness of your consciousness, right? So
right.
I just think that's absolutely profound. And going back to what you're saying about your kiddos real quick, that's wonderful to hear another father making that a priority and giving that as a foundation. So I just wanted to say, thank you for showing up like that for them. I think I did the same thing with my kids, very open-minded, and I'm showing them how to maneuver through time. So time, I don't teach them that time is on the clock. Yes, they know how to read the clock and everything. All my kids are 13 and younger, youngest being 3. But what I do is I have them recognize when they think about something and then when they experience it. So, one of my daughters will be like, oh, Dad, I was just thinking about dogs and then I heard the dog bark. And I'll say, and so I teach them how they collapse that moment and how the inner is the outer. So they have a direct knowing of their impact and how powerful their consciousness is. And so now I have them running up to me and all these synchronicities and things that are happening. So yeah, we're building superheroes.
Well, yeah, I mean, my kids are versed in remote viewing, psychic abilities, clairvoyance. I'm getting them into more conscious channeling of spirit entities. This is the kind of stuff, and I used to love starting with simplicity, like what we call street magic. I'm out here in Nevada. I'm in Las Vegas, so we'll go down to Las Vegas on the Strip and give people a sense of bliss instantaneously. And so people are like, well, have you ever experienced it before? And they're like, no. And in the same breath, their lights out. Now, to someone who perceived that, even a hypnotist, I'd be like, how the hell you didn't prime them? How is it possible that you didn't prime them, but you're able to put them into this somnambulistic state of complete deepness that goes beyond this material at a subatomic level, but they're fully aware and you just change their reality. And furthermore, their friends get out their camera and in the same breath of them saying it, they freak out and their friend goes into complete sleep in the middle of nowhere on a street in Vegas. And they're like, holy shit, he's out cold and he's standing up. And I'm like, okay, now what are you interested in? You want to change his name? You want to do a couple of funny things to help you realize and most common, I'll just erase their name. I'll turn myself into Justin Bieber. A couple of fundamental silly things that people are now aware. Holy shit. And furthermore, I'll take their wallet and keys and hold it in front of them. And when they awake, which is only a fraction of a second, they cannot see this. Now, from a psychologist perspective, they would call this a reverse hallucination. This is a state of the now moment. And when they're like, well, what is your name? And they're like, I don't know. And their friends are like, holy shit, this is really happening. Furthermore, they take another look, they turn away, and they go, oh my goodness, it's Justin Bieber. Can I get a photo? And this is all levels of awareness that takes place. And then I bring them to a different state, and they're awake, and their friends are like, oh my goodness. And they're like, okay, so when are we starting? What is going on here? These are degrees and shifts of frequency. And the reason that it's so easy for me to do it, I don't sit there like some wannabe hypnotist giving you contemplation, suggestions, commands, all this kind of stuff. Right. It's frequential. So I'm already transmitting that frequency. And the second they are, say, for example, within what someone would perceive as a biofield or frequency, which is abundant, timeless, endless, limitless, infinite, if I put my attention to it, intention, it is realized instantaneously. These are great ways to validate the now moment. And it freaks people out, but then they walk away with, let me see, what have you got issues with? I've got a phobia of this, a PTSD of that, and it's gone in a fraction of a second and never to return. Yeah. Because it's frequency. Now, a hypnotist, a therapist, a life coach might call it, oh, well, we've changed your consciousness, blah, blah, blah. The permanency comes from the frequency that is realized through the material. Yes. And they will feel it. So how do they feel it? They wake up rested in what was perceived as 10, 15 minutes that turns into 1 second, and they don't realize it even jumped a beat, but they've accessed this bliss. I feel like the average result is I've had 5 pina coladas, a full body massage, and 10 days in the Bahamas. Oh, how did that happen? It's frequential. Yes. And you have to be able to bring it, right? That's the part where you have to bring it. Yes, that's it. That's precisely it. And because nothing is physical, right? Everything is cosmic frequency. It's the cosmic frequency. So when it's slowed down to this currency, right? So if we're operating this currency, it's electromagnetism. What I'm bringing frequentially is unified. It's unified. It's one. Yes, exactly. It's not a polarizing effect of one or the other. It's a unification. And that's when you see miracles, super normal things take place because you're having them return. And then all I'm doing is being a beacon, a tuning fork, and giving that frequency to you. Once you're exposed to it, whether it's 1,000,000 miles away or within my presence, you will be realized at a subatomic level that will be undeniable for anyone that is an experiencer. And would you also say that taking them to that unified space that's the key? So to you, in your expertise in this way, it's just run of the mill every day. But for them, they're operating from this dualistic left brain, right brain, yes, no, good or bad state of mind. Mm-hmm. And so in the present, so I like to say, in truth, a lie cannot be held. So when you show up as this truth, aka principle of unification, anything that is within the vicinity, depending on how broad you allow your field to be, can be nothing other than one, unified in that space. And so when they snap back, they go back into their game of this or that duality, and they're in the field of unification. Like, oh, how is this possible? And like you said, it's just a matter of shifting. I would say shifting perception is another way, but that's also, you could also say unification. So it's both. That's wonderful. And so you give them this mystical evidence of this currency. So it comes in clair senses, mediumship, channeling, psychic abilities or psychokinesis, telepathy, telepathy, telekinesis. Telekinesis is always a fun experience. And I
What
always tell
what's
people to
been your
start
best?
with, well, I would start with simplicity, the simplicity of merging flames. Take two candles
Mm-hmm.
and watch your ability. This is always an entry level. I want to start with the basics, and then of course, actually moving objects is a whole nother ball game. But you develop what we call the plasma to make that palpable, and that comes in the physical flesh. For me, I get excited by the physical flesh, like seeing things transmute back to its original state in moments is just another day in the office for me. And so, if you want to always get started, I always, when I witness physical healing, you will see the flesh wiggle before your very eyes until it resumes back to its default of perfection. And you will witness it. You'll think you're hallucinating until you watch a sore, a gaping hole, a tumor, whatever. It shrinks and it's dissolved. You can have the medical papers, whatever you want. It will be validating that took place, and you're like, holy shit. The doctors are like, how did that happen? It's frequentially.
Thank you. Yes.
So I like to get people on that ground level. Have you ever bent metal before? Have you melted spoons of anything of that nature? These
Um,
are entry levels.
have I? Are you asking me? Or are
Yeah.
you saying this in general? Um, no, but I've also never tried. I've
Right.
done other things. So I think the way that this has shown up for me personally is through weather modification, through obviously healing, remote viewing, um, and then yeah, objects. I have made objects move, but as far as like a spoon or something, no, nothing
Yeah,
specific.
I like starting that at that entry level, because you first start with something where you're feeling the tactile
Right.
resistance of it on your flesh, and then with your attention intention through the mastery of the frequency, you watch it like laser beams from Superman's eyes
Mm-hmm.
melt the very metal into butter in the same breath.
Mm-hmm.
And so you start there, and then of course you take a spoon and melt it like a candle with your hand, and then furthermore you take a fork and you move the prongs in either direction using your attention intention. These are all transmutable experiences that are very validated, and when you master the cultivational practices, very much realized. And it's
So
just a matter of understanding how to do that. And so most Nigong practices that are any offering from any Taoist lineage is quite frankly nonsensical, because they're not giving you the true keys to the city. They
mhm.
will refer to the lower dantian as the cauldron. This is not the cauldron. And it's not a cauldron that holds fire. It's actually yin energy. It's ice. It comes from the essence of all things, the primordial mother.
Of
And
course. See, and oh man, this is so interesting. So, I've never liked, for whatever reason, and a lot of so more that you connect with me and you kind of get to know me. I don't know a lot of things externally because I always experience it inwardly first, and then it's
yeah,
reflected outside. So every time I heard the lower dantian, it never resonated for me to focus there. I focus at a point right above my head, and then my heart, and then really in the mid back region. But I've never focused on the lower dantian, and I never knew why until this moment. So thank you for that, because
and, and it
I
reveals
knew
it.
that they had flipped it, but it makes sense because most things in this realm they do that. They take the truth, they flip
Never
it, then they
it,
give it back to you. Wow.
as the Taoist seeker, always remember it's never as it seems.
Right.
Diluted a verse, the first incantation of the Tao Te Ching is, the way to walk is not the way. The
Mm,
name that is named is not the name.
not
You are
it.
both named and nameless. That
Mhm.
is the true nature of reality.
Yes. Wow. This is so good. So I want to go back to the frequency of things because you're saying this frequently, which I comprehend. Whenever you're bending the spoon, doing the thing, in my mind, seeing it through the lens of cosmic frequency, a frequency is how frequent something happens. In
That's
this,
resonance.
right. And so in this way, a thought form. And again, I go back to creating an etheric pulse rhythm, a repeating pattern in the medium. So if everything is made up of its own corresponding vibration frequency. What you're doing is you're not changing this per se, you're shifting the resonant frequency of the field that then gives rise to whatever thought you're focusing on. Yeah?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, what you're doing is you're exhibiting this currency from limited electromagnetism to unification. It's whole. It's
Yes.
no longer separate. It's whole, and that will come in the form of God, Tao, Buddha, universe. It is beyond this electromagnetic spectrum.
Yep.
So that frequency is not of this realm. This is not of this dimension.
Mm-hmm.
It's a frequency that is whole. It's not
Exactly.
separate.
Yes, yes, yes. And that is the magic. Magic is just knowledge not understood. Yeah. So it's just a level of, man, coming into this greater awareness and then applying the application of it.
Well, yeah. I mean, when you look at the Dantian infrastructure for a Taoist,
Mm-hmm.
the upper Dantian is the sun. It's
Mm-hmm.
the light, and it represents itself as the center point of all things related to that. Also, the residence of what we refer to as supreme purity is one of the creators of the cosmos. The middle Dantian is represented as the earth, the keeper of information, the residence of jade purity, and that is where you will find all things related to that frequency. And finally, the merging of yin and yang, you will reside back to the primordial mother, which is the creator of all things, the perfection manifest. And that's the merging of the electromagnetism, and you bring it into that space, that lower dantian. When I move it and you feel that chill through your legs, oh yes, you are here, my friend.
Mm-hmm.
You're experiencing that. Now, the primordial mother is evidence of the electromagnetism being merged as unification. You enter all things instantly realized, and that will present itself through that cultivational practice.
Mm-hmm.
And furthermore, you can store these said evidence in any energy center at all. The limit of, oh no, you can't store it in the head, the heart, the way, it's absolute nonsensical. Furthermore, when you limit yourself by a cultivational practice, like if you go into Taoist magic, a lot of people will limit you by your cultivational practices within, tantric sort of like systems where you must abstain from what they would perceive as a sexual release. This is again nonsensical. When you identify as nothing, this material becomes abundant, timeless, endless, limitless, infinite. So
you.
You
Yes.
will never be limited. You'll never be exhausted, and you will transmute that through this physical flesh. But it must be realized through the method.
And people, especially through the cosmic frequency, whoever hears this is so great, because I find that what's happening through this conversation is a transcendence of limitation. This is transcending a lot of the limitations that we have inadvertently or advertently placed on ourselves, whether that's been through bureaucratic external political systems or corrupt spiritual systems or personal default, whatever. This level of awareness is truly freeing for people. And this is what's not taught, because a lot of people are taught that, you can't release if you're a man, because if you do, you're da. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. That's like saying that we're going to deplete the earth of natural resources. The earth is a living being. She is self-replenishing. So is this body. I can never run out of the source. I am the source. I am the principle. And
that crossover must be from conception to realization and self-realization to that knowing, and it must be repeatable. Right. So, you find evidence of this. The vacuous Karen that you hang out with in a room that is clearly, from what we perceive from my OG experiences, we call them psychic vampires. These are evidence of limitation. And if you are subject to the human condition, you will work at the currency of emotions, and those emotions will make you limited. And
Yeah.
those limitations will present themselves in exhaustion, as furthermore we speak of the bellows, and that man is not like that. The second you realize you are not man through
Mm-hmm.
your method, all things are now. And we teach people from my teacher, Jade Emperor, let the man who's never left the village, let him know he's seen the world,
Mm-hmm.
that it is within. And that self-realization comes from the alchemy. And that alchemy is second to none. So whenever I have dialogue with my teachers, they are facets of the diamond of perfection that returns you to the monologue of the mother. That
Mm.
is the now moment.
I want to share an experience I had a couple years ago. Just right out here. I'm in Connecticut, and I was sitting on a tree stump. It was facing the sunset, and I had really had no intention of going into that meditation or sitting there, but I found myself sitting there, and I went into this deep state, and a question arose, an inquiry, as you would say, and it was, what is the truth? What is truth? And as my ego mind is doing what it does, and well, it's this, it's that, I realized that if I say that is the truth, then that means that can't be the truth. And then if I say, well, now this is the truth, that means that can't be the truth. And so I released all of these ideas of what the truth was, and I realized in that moment, which is what this whole conversation is encompassing around, is that essence, is that 0 point. The truth is not something that you can say it is this or it's the way, it's that. It is the realization of the potential of what can be, as you would call the mother. So I just wanted to share that. It was a really profound experience of letting go only to be. And in that I found what I would say the truth, which is ironically not the truth.
Which is, it refers back to the sacrium, the sacred sacrifice of said self, which
Mm-hmm. There we
returns
go.
right back to, as we describe reality, the bellows. You're
There we go.
contracting and expanding at the same time. You're
Yes,
all things and nothing at the same time.
that's what
And that
happened.
becomes self-realized.
Yes, that moment was so. It was. I go back to that often of that. Well, I'm not, but I am. But I'm not, but I. It's this flow, and there's a
Root.
yes, there's a charge there, and there's a substance that yes becomes the essence or the principle from which all then begins to, and that's where we go into our life. And we're like, well, if I just think about it, oh, there it is. When you move from that place, and I just think that that was just a really profound moment of realization. And it's like when people can let go and give themselves space, it's there. It's always there.
And I think that you make a good point. It sounds very airy fairy to most. The common man, the mundane realizer of 9 to 5, and that my life I live it and then I die, is limited at best. Yet it is a perception. This is the
Yes.
path that they've walked, and which we refer to as being misaligned.
Yeah.
Your alignment comes from when you get bitten by the spiritual dragon that gives you said evidence, a premonition, an apparition, a vision, an insight, an inquiry that results in an epiphany, Sherlock to your Watson. Aha, elementary, my dear Watson, like the experience that you referred to,
Mhm.
is more evidence because it's visceral, it's somatic, it's kinesthetic. It cannot be denied.
Yes, and would you agree that most people do not progress on their journey because they're looking for something that is experiential? They want to touch it. They want to, where are the ETs at? Where's the? I want to see the physical evidence, and ironically enough, in their search for this visceral spiritual experience, they're also blocking it.
Well, it goes back
Right?
to the bellows effect. You're reaching
Yeah,
for it, and
you're
it
reaching
it will
exactly.
dissolve.
Precisely.
When you unify, everything is evidence of this. And but there must be that substance and that material that is a currency for this realm so that you can validate it. You're not having a psychotic transitory moment. It becomes realized through that material. And
Yeah.
when you do that, then you're like, oh, okay, well, I've been great. And, I've had students that they travel from around the world. I get people, natives of China, Japan,
Mm,
Germany, they come from all over to train here at the temple. They have never experienced any level of gnosis within Taoist path like the stuff that I share here at this temple, because it's perplexing to them. On face value, they go, this is what they consider a guilo. Now, a guilo, I am a guilo. This is
what's
what
that?
they call a white spirit. It's the N word for an Asian determining an identity of an individual. It's like, okay, I'm going to dismiss that. I'm going to dismiss that because they
Okay.
go, how is a Guaylo teach me more than I've ever got from natives from across Taoist temples across
Because
the Beijing Asian landscape? Because I've been this 1,000 times over.
that's what I'm saying.
My
It's not a.
physical representation means nothing.
Thank you. Yes, and that's another principle. The source is not biased. It's not going to just merge with Asians or merge with brown people or whoever can attain the awareness of self. There it will be, and it's not saved for anyone. It's saved for whoever has taken it upon themselves to do the inner work, to be leaders of their own consciousness, to be inquisitive of the nature of reality. There it is. And see, this is where humans get into trouble. They get into mental and emotional traps because they compartmentalize and they say, oh, this is Asian, so this goes here. This is Caucasian, so it goes here. This is African, so it goes here. We have to get to the point, and this is part of the work I do with cosmic frequency, is removing the edges. Now, I work a lot with animals, and I have gotten good at this because I remove the edges. I don't see the squirrel in its squirrely form. I don't see the spider as a spider. The spider is a reflection of that which I am. Not I as in Krys, but I as in the essence, the principle, as you would say, the bellows. And so when we remove the edges, then spiritual practices, teachings, self realization becomes a universal human experience. We get out of our own way to where someone might be more open to you, not because of the color of your skin, but because of the character and the essence and the principle of which you are. And that to me is the preliminary foundations that humans must start to enter into in order to transcend and to move into a higher frequency. We have to stop putting edges.
Well, it's as simple as identity politics, identity referencing to the
But
human mind as being the
it's
construct. It's it's unfortunately the very death of humanists, and
exactly
it starts and ends with the belief system. But people go, Jiffer, but you said belief system. Yeah, it's on the way.
it's on
A
the way.
belief system is on the way to knowing.
Yes.
Knowing is beyond the belief system. So the belief system is a construct that is very limited. If you stay within it, you will always be limited. You'll always see yourself as limited, and you will never unify. You must have experience. You must have experiential moments that validate it. And it comes in that form of visceral, kinesthetic, somatic now moments.
Mhm.
And you use the tuning fork to validate it. It
And would
becomes yours.
and would you even say so? Things like you mentioned levitation earlier. We talked about that. We talked about the extrasensory perceptions that we can all tap into. From my experience, whether it's teleportation, levitating, remote healing, remote viewing, whatever the thing is, there is going to be a physical experience of it. In other words, a lot of people think, well, that's only for whatever dimension and those heightened, enlightened beings. I think what we're saying here today is that these visceral experiences, these tangible experiences are for everyone. And you can have this. You don't need to be some sort of being from a different star system. You can be here now and experience the true nature of reality and do things like levitate, teleport, because this is a byproduct of
the currency of this electromagnetism.
It's a byproduct of it.
And
Yes.
you use the unification, the mother, as the pure source. That's the control and command center that transmutes into this dukkha, as my dear friend the Buddhist monk would say. This distortion of the electromagnetism comes from primordial mother, said self.
Right.
It's the unification.
Yeah.
So it's again a polarizing effect, a mirroring effect. The mother is perfection, creating distortion within this material that can return to perfection if given the access to the Wu Ji.
Yeah.
If given the access, and to validate that, it must be realized. There must be self-evidence. There must be experiences that go, oh, wow, I'm able to, I love doing that with like what I call psychic readings, which is just a facet of that. So I'll walk up to someone in the street and say, would you like a psychic reading? And they're like, okay, magic man, give me a psychic reading. And I always start, for Taoists, there's 108 energy centers between the earth and the universe that you can rev up and unify and become superhuman. Normally, some Buddhists or yogis might call them siddhas, or things where, you're acquiring these supernatural states. Mm-hmm. These are just sensory perception within a Taoist path. This is
all a range on the spectrum, right?
Right. So, I'll walk up to someone and when I see reality, it's a blank slate. So you see yourself here. I'm operating as you would see in all dimensions at once. So I'm experiencing the sun, the moon, the earth right now. It's visually being transmuted through me. I'm moving through the galaxy, and that's what I'm experiencing right now while I'm talking to you. Now, furthermore, and you experience that just by me saying it, you started to feel it viscerally, going, holy shit, this is the now moment. Now, furthermore, when I look at things with my eyes open, it's just void, it's darkness. And then the second I create, it becomes realized and it has the energy potential. So I'm taking from that the mother and distorting it into electromagnetism. So now it has substance. So if I'm in the moment of healing as Imperium, the command, the maestro, it instantly becomes realized. Instant healing, manifestation magic. So what happens is the second I put my intention to it, it forms this cluster of energy potential, and you will feel it viscerally. And it becomes that form. So when I witness a healing, it literally engulfs the said subject or participant or someone who's a recipient, and they will feel this visceral feeling, and I will see them light up until they become phosphorus white light, and then it resorts and resumes back to their energetic field and then goes deep into a subatomic level, and all of a sudden the tumor's gone, the healing's, the pain's gone, the headache, the open sore that seals before my very eyes. This all is progressive in this state of now. Now, when I talk about, healing in of itself, and I talk about, this progressive moment and what you would do to acquire these things, these sitters, these supernatural, superhuman things, this is a developmental mastery. Mm-hmm. And you will then validate more and more within yourself this realization of the truth. And it doesn't come in watered down forms where, it happens. I was having this conversation with Tom Campbell, and he's experienced many things over his very simple life. He's an OBE. He was part of the Monroe Institute. He's a physicist. In any case, and he's like, wow, you experience all this stuff. Like literally people come to me all day long going, grandma's in a coma. She's going to die tomorrow. The doctor said she's going to die. And I'll be like, no. And they're like, what? I know I was told to call you. I know I was supposed to approach you. What are you saying? No, she'll be fine. And they're like, what? Then the next day, grandma wakes up out of the coma. The doctor freaks out and goes, what the? How is that? How did that even happen? Mm-hmm. How was that realized? Mm-hmm. Because I'm not invested in it. It's not a part of me. I'm not looking for you to tell me I'm the next coming of Jesus. I'm the Messiah. I'm the healer. I'm just exhibiting this information. I'm realizing it because it's everywhere.
Because it's
And when
everywhere.
you have sensory perception. So when I do a psychic reading, like I said, when you have the sensory perception, I'll walk up to someone, I'll just read their auric field. And then I have their mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical state inside of 30 seconds. And then I go, okay, let me read it. And I go ahead, read me. And I just read it like I'm reading a menu. I'm not invested in it. I don't have a position of whether I like it or don't like it. It's just information. So I always start at the bottom. So the first energy center is attached to the earth. Then some people would, within formal indigenous practices, refer to these things as chakras. This would be your first chakra, which would be your perineum. Once I get the boundaries out of the way, and then we go to the sexual energy. And when I start talking about it, because I just read it off, they go, whoa, 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 whoa. How do you have any idea? How do you know this stuff? And this sobers people up real fast. They go, listen, I've got no investment in this. I'm just reading, and I can see it with my eyes open. There's information everywhere. Everywhere I look, there's an auric field. Information is oscillating. It will present itself in emotions and virtues. And part of the way I'm trained, this is how you get insight. When you can share something about someone that they know and hold as true within themselves that they don't want to reveal to the world, you get an experience of what we call the emperor's new clothes. And this is the Mr. what I call the Mr. Miyagi effect, which a lot of my students have. And they're like, well, you know, I'm getting to a point now. I've been doing this, and I can move energy and I can change my emotions. But what is going on here? And I'll be like, okay, this is what we call the Pinto to Lamborghini. And they're like, what do you mean? You're driving around in a Pinto. I tell you to pull over. You go to the hood of the car, you open the hood up, and there's a Lamborghini engine in the bottom. And you're like, holy shit, where did that come from? You have been cultivating it this whole time. There's no need to be distracted with a specific system. You follow the progression through the visceral experience, and then I will give you adaptations of how you apply this within this material. In the example of manifestation, magic healing, and you have evidence and go, holy shit, I thought I was doing nothing, and I'm doing everything at once and have abilities instantaneously. Now, I like to microdose people so they see instant results, because there's nothing more distracting from a humanistic perspective than feeling like you're going to sit there and you've invested, because this is what we call within psychology or hypnosis, they call it heteroaction. A cycle of a human is to what they start, they must finish. It's ingrained deep inside your innate knowing. Your internal perception of reality is to replicate and survive another day. The simplicity of it. So when I put my hand out to ask you, I don't even say anything. I just put my hand out. Your heteroaction is to grab my hand and shake it. Furthermore, this is just the fluidity of this energy potential. And you'll find it even more self-evident. Go to a door, open it, and attempt not to close it. And you'll find something inside yourself that you cannot contain yourself without wanting to resist the idea of being able to close that door. And this is just the evidence of the electromagnetism. Now, let's get past that. This is always a baseline. You're using this currency. Your emotions are the baseline. This is not reality. This is where psychologists are like, how dare you say that? Look, enough of the nonsense. Talking within, if you're from psychology, biology, neurology, physiology, you are limited at best. These are belief systems that are founded by self-realized examples from your own experience. This is not reality. Yet this is how people perceive things, and they stay in one little thing. Where I'm having conversations with neurologists or neuroscientists, and they're like, the third eye doesn't exist. And I'm like, really? No. It's not sympathetically innovated. You can't feel anything up here. And I'm like, really?
Oh my goodness.
Show you energy potential instantaneously. And they're like, okay, show me. And in about a fraction of a second. And I love this hokey Hollywood stuff where they're like,
Mm-hmm.
Look, you're drawing, I get it. You're drawing your attention to a point to realize there's something there. What I do is instantly show you without any evidence of me luring your attention as a suggestion to believe there's something there, which is not what I like to teach. I like teaching precognition within a parapsychologist's mind, which is understanding that you will experience it before I say it. And then they go, holy shit, I was feeling this viscerally, and then you said it, and it
Yep.
what? This becomes more self-evident for the seeker. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does, because this all comes back to knowing how to consciously, uh, for lack of better words, manipulate the electromagnetic spectrum. When one understands that what they're viewing in reality is not reality, it's the byproduct of reality, then he can go back to the drawing board, which is the eternal principle of self. Go to that blank screen. Where's the first TV? Close your eyes. There it is. There's your vision. There's your inner vision. And as you start to perceive, you start to then uh, move and shift the frequencies and the vibrations that make up your external world. So people who are in awe of you are only staying within that traditional Roy G. Biv spectrum. That's it. That's all they can see. That's all they know. But even within that Roy G. Biv, there's a lot of movement. For example, when you look at a rainbow and you see the different colors, most people operate from thinking that you could take out the color red and it's gonna be an individual thing apart from color green and apart from yellow. But a rainbow is all one spectrum of the same substance called water particles, right? Being shown on by the light. You can't take out any one color of that rainbow. It's all one thing. So if you understand how to maneuver the essence, the principle that is giving rise to the rainbow, then you can shift that spectrum that gives all these the illusion of all these separate things that people think as external reality. So it makes perfect sense to me. And this, what I find that's happening here is you're giving rise and validation to ether physics, and ether physics is giving rise and validation to what you are bringing and experiencing in the world. And I think it's absolutely powerful because people are not limited beings. They're limited in the way that they perceive. Through your experiences, you've been able to broaden your awareness to now go beyond Roy G. Biv and play around there and have fun. I also have a theory that, because you were talking about gamma and the brainwaves a little bit ago, and science, modern science, which is heavily controlled, so is mainstream spirituality, so is most of the New Age community, and so is ufology. All these official things are heavily controlled. That's why you gotta listen to yourself, everyone. With that said, where was I going at that point? I lost my train of thought. Mainstream spirituality. I don't remember. It'll come back.
It's of no importance or value. That's the whole point.
That's it. It's not there. Cool. No more.
That's the whole point. When you are not of your mind, if you are not thinking, you are knowing.
Right.
And it comes back to, very clearly within the teachings of the Jade Emperor. When you accept you know nothing, you know everything. If you have to learn it, you do not know it. If you know it, you do not have to learn it.
Right.
These are self-evident. Furthermore, this whole year people have been, very deep in inquiry with Lao Tzu's insight, having created the story of reality from his immortality and the fabric of the primordial mother is direct source of that. So they always ask him, well, what's going to happen? Is it death and destruction and financial ruin and, oh my goodness, the apocalypse? And he always returns with this. He's quite cheeky. If you ever watch any of my transmissions, you'll be like, wow, this guy's...
I'm going to have to. I haven't.
You'll have to check out one. And furthermore, he'll be like, imagine you're like a grain of sand asking the beach, what are we doing today? fall back into the beach and be realized. And I'm just like, you can't make this stuff up. And it's so powerful. It's so simple. It's so rich. It's
Mhm.
so visceral because it's a knowing. It's a wisdom beyond wisdom. And this is a type of insight that gives you ponder to, holy crap, this direct source. This is what this is. He is a facet of that. He's the dialogue I'm having that returns me to the monologue. And these profound moments. And so he'll always talk in frequency. He doesn't get so consumed. He will translate some things into timeline on a monthly thing. So he'll give you the highest peak of that month and what frequentially will take place from a electromagnetic disposition. So what happens is you are using this currency. So he'll tell you you're going to experience more metal, more wind,
Mm.
more
Yes.
water, more fire, and it will come in this form. It will transmute into a virtue that you will realize as an emotion. It will be deficient or excess. And I mean, I think that's brilliant in that sense because it makes it so solidified. And so many people are like, oh my goodness, he said it and it happened that day. Or furthermore, I watched a video of him making this detailed description of what the frequencies were oscillating through this particular month within this timeline of what we call space time, time space, whatever you want to call it. And he said, this will happen here. And I went back and I watched it after it happened. And that was the day my son was born and blah, 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 blah. And they just
Well,
go, whoa.
well, that's the thing. Yes. 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 And this is, again, which is full circle to what I had forgotten, but it's about reading the spectrum. It's about being able to read the field. And what is the field? When you know what the field is, when you know what the ether is as the principle, as the medium, then you can now work with it and utilize it. You can see potentials. So in if you have 8 people and those 8 people are thinking about, you know, one's thinking about sandwiches, they're all thinking about food, but different types of food. If someone is sensitive enough and they come into that group of 8 people, they're going to start thinking about food as well. Another person comes in, they'll start thinking about food because the field has now coalesced itself at a stationary vibration that we would consider food. And so this is how you can read timelines, if you want to call them that. Time spheres is what I call them, because you're picking up on the etheric vibrations that make up people, places, and things. So much like you with the chakras, I offered a service a while ago called Inner Light Energy Tuning, where I do a chakra reading and people, I pick up information from years ago, traumas that happened, same response. How do you know? It's because I'm just reading the field. Well, how do you read the field? You don't read it here. It's, as you were saying, it's a knowing, it's a feeling, it's a being with and letting the field be heard by you.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on your sensory perception. I see everything.
You see it. Okay, so
see
you
it,
see
and
these
so when,
yes.
when I share with the audience, oh, you're experiencing this visceral charge. I see
Mhm.
it first, and if I want to experience, I experience it. But I'm in tune with everything that's happening within your electromagnetism, your visceral experience. I can see all the inner workings of what's going on with my eyes open. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't need to commune with my eyes closed. It's a developmental skill.
Mhm.
There is nothing wrong with eyes closed or eyes open. When I transmit or channel Lao Tzu, my eyes are open and I don't blink, and people
Mhm.
freak out and they're like,
Mhm.
"Holy shit! I feel heat from this whole thing." And then furthermore, when you witness one of these channels, he will actually transmit and give you a transmission, and you'll be like, "Holy crap!
Mhm.
This stuff is burning my eyebrows," because this is part of the sensory perception. So you're getting an instant upgrade and a frequency adaptation that
Mhm.
will come from your interaction. So when you witness one of his channels where I transmute him through my physical body, it's kind of crazy to watch personally. But I'm like a little kid. 30 years later, I still experience it. Furthermore, that was part of when I did the meditation the next day, and this is for all the kids out there, including your kids and mine. There was a thing back in the day called a newspaper. I used to go to the
Yeah.
newspaper, and I
Right.
found the classifieds. This is how I found the meditation class. This is
Wow.
furthermore
I
how
was
the
going to
following
ask you.
this all happened in one day. So I went from meditating for the first time to finding a channeling class. 2 days later, I went to that and I channeled Lao Tzu instantly. And the teacher had 60 years in this field of what he considered excellence and was like, what the who are you? Like he literally went from spiritual enlightenment to you're some overgrown troglodyte. You walk in here and in 5 seconds you're transmitting the highest ascended master that I've ever experienced viscerally. And it was a visceral thing, right? So
Mhm.
you can tap into that frequency. It poured through me and people were getting sticks out with marshmallows on the end and they're eating it. This is what you experience when you're a participant in witnessing the transmutation of Lao Tzu in this space. So it hasn't changed in 30 years. It's the same
Wow.
thing. And so you go, whoa, holy shit, this is really happening, which is more self-evident realization. This is the important part. This is the highest level of ascension for a Taoist. This is the knowing, the Gnostic path of realization is to be present with all things. You're all things and nothing.
Mhm.
And so I went from that, and then a day later, I witnessed the physical healing of the gangrenous flesh back to pink in color. In between that, I had a whimsical experience where I just got done with being trained in distant healing. And I was like, oh, well, I just finished my day. And my friend called up, and she's like, I busted my ankle. I'm not going to be able to see you today. I'm like, oh, how disappointing. And then I was like, hang on a second. What do you mean by shit? My ankle's the size of a watermelon. I'm like, okay,
Got it. I got you.
learned this stuff, right? And she's like, what stuff? What are you talking about? I'm like, look, can I just try something on you? And if it doesn't work, we're good. And she's like, will you hurry up, man? I just want to go back and watch some TV, Oprah, whatever the hell she was
Mhm,
watching.
mhm.
And I'm like, okay, let me do this. Now, all you're going to hear is what this thing at the end, we call it an incantation. And she's like, okay, all right. So I go through, I literally look at it at face value, like a piece of paper, 1 through 10. These are the things that you do. And I was doing this quietly. She couldn't see what I was doing, but there were several different stages to this healing. And then I finished with the incantation. It was basically heal, 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 heal. And the next thing that came out of her mouth was, what the she screamed it through the phone and said, what kind of magic or sorcery are you doing? And I'm like, what are you talking about? My ankle shrunk before my very eyes and I'm standing on it right now.
Wow.
And I'm like, you're full of shit. Like I literally was like, you're so full of shit. Because I didn't have an expectation, which drew me into this
Right.
whole
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
thing, everything at face value. And so I went from that, and then that's how I got to the gangrenous foot from her mother. I went over to her house, and there was this whole crazy hoop la la, and like this woman literally, the mother was like, back in those days, people were smoking everywhere. So I walk into her house, I'm doing this. She's puffing away. She's on a couch. The daughter runs to me, gives me a big hug, and I'm like, holy shit. Now, I wouldn't have believed that, to be honest, my friend, but she was one of those freaks that love Polaroids. So she took a photo of her ankle swollen like a watermelon. So
Yeah.
when she showed it to me and she's standing on it right now, I was like, holy shit, this is real.
So,
This
of
is absolutely real.
course. So now let me ask you this then. This level of experience, this level of being,
Mhm.
in my opinion, it's normal. This is what
Yeah. Oh, it's very
this is what we're
perfect.
supposed to be. But we find ourselves where people are, not believing, or they're highly surprised and all these things. What
Well,
is
when you
your
have someone, sorry, I was going to say, when you have
yeah,
a healer that says, "Oh, you just don't believe it. This is what happens." This is kind of what we call a cop out, and it comes from the ego. You're more
yes,
concerned about the validation of someone else. When I don't have any skin in the game, which I don't, when you are no place, person, or thing, I couldn't care about the outcome because all I'm doing is bringing a frequency. It has nothing to do with whether mummy dies or lives, or it's the now moment.
hmm hmm
And so with that, you witness freaky things. Like, for example, my kid eats the dirt, gets a swollen lip, and within about 3 seconds, I'll take it from a size of a balloon down to zero. And that's how it works because I'm not invested in the fact that it's my kid. It hurt. He hurt himself. He blew up. He went straight face into the dirt. It's about Shazam,
Mm-hmm.
unified state.
Mm-hmm.
And you in some way, some people would identify and say, well, you're not being empathetic to that state. This is different. This
Mm-hmm.
is a different thing. The unification that I'm tapping into presents itself when you are myriad by the human condition as emotion. There will be a currency. It will come in the form of a virtue of selflessness, of servitude. But you can then realize it as that unified state and be no place, person, or thing, and have
Right.
the miracle witnessing as the observer of just this incredible craziness.
And that's what I was going to ask you. What do you feel is the byproduct, or what motivates you to continue to share this with people?
Well, it just my personality gets excited, and because my personality is part of the unified state, it doesn't matter. It oscillates back and forth, but you must cross over that line. That comes from the methodology. It cannot, it's all conceptual until otherwise known. You know what you know. You don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And until you master the energetic potential, the infrastructure, the architecture, it's just nonsense. It's just talking heads. It's just, oh, I'm a virtuous person. If I had a penny for how many times I've done hundreds of these podcasts, I'm now close to 300-400 right now.
Wow.
I can tell you, I'll get people that claim they are the next coming of Jesus, and I mispronounce their name, and they go into fits of like anger and psychosis
On this show.
on this show. We agree to disagree, and I don't publish those. But I've got, out of 400 podcasts, I probably had at least 60 people that have had that moment, because they're experiencing the frequency that they claim they're this virtuous example of, but they are none of the above. They're the old fake it till you make it moment. And for me, I don't have a problem with that. When I come across someone who's literally living the fake it till you make it, instead of me going, you've been ousted as a wannabe, blah, blah, blah. My first example is, let me give you the frequency so you can be realized.
Mm-hmm.
Not, you're such a hack, you're full of shit. But their ego, they're so egoic, they don't care about anything else. Their personality needs to be satisfied, and they want to present themselves. And we always say this within Taoism: if you act in virtue, you have none.
If you act in virtue, you have none. Precisely.
Yeah. And which is virtue signaling within a spiritual space, which is really, quite frankly, I would say probably 80% of people that are out there right now, they're doing that, and they're claiming they have the answer to the nature of reality. This is the way. This is the absolute truth. It's nonsensical. And, a lot of people are like, well, you're a priest, and how can you have this opinion? It's like, I have a personality, but I can operate in that and be unified at the same time. That's the old expression. I can chew gum and walk at the same time. This is a mastery.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, it's all just talky, not walky, which returns me back to the Pepsi challenge. Mm-hmm. Show me. Mm-hmm. I'll do the taste test with anybody.
And I really appreciate that, because I think that, especially in this world, there's a lack of genuine authenticity. And a lot of people have read a lot of books and done a lot of things, but at the end of the day, like you said, where is the results, and where have you integrated this into your life, and how have you taken this to ensure in some ways that the reality in which you find yourself is a little bit more at peace. And I think most people, that I've experienced, especially with doing this kind of work, is it's complete opposite. They're in it because they have a big name, and there's a lot of three-letter agencies involved in keeping the facade up. Because when we talk about the progression of human consciousness, it's not just on planet or off planet. It's a conglomeration of entities, beings who are playing a different level of the game. And I think people like yourself, others, are here to ensure that there's at least some ray of authenticity when it comes to the advancement of consciousness. I know that's how I show up, is I could care less, believe it or not. ask questions or not, but I'm going to be as I am and show up as the best I can. I think that's the magic. And I love to meet other Taoists. I didn't go through the training you did, at least not this lifetime, but I think I have in other experiences, and it's nice to bring all this full circle. It really is. It's really cool. What's that word again that they called you? Because you
Guilo.
I don't, I'm not even going to use that.
That's equivalent to the N bomb. You know what I'm saying? It's
I
like,
know. I'm not even going to use that because
but I think I find it funny. It's like because they have these miracles, and at a certain point, I sort of moved into the social sphere, the inner web, in the last probably 16 months. Before that, I was basically working in the shadows, teaching thousands of people this sort of alchemy. But my teachers gave me a crossroads. So the crossroads was this. I was just going about my business, being, a Taoist master stroke Taoist priest. And, many people are like, well, that sounds like hoopla la. No, the Taoist master title is referencing to my ordained lineages. That's why they call me a Taoist master. Now, furthermore, I show evidence of that mastery through my wisdom teaching and things of that nature, and then self-evidence of experiential moments that make it so. And so you will find very quickly that I am not full of the proverbial shit, and I can show you. Whereas most people will just talky, and to a point where you've just consumed so much of it that your own breath smells like shit. You have to realize that there is a certain point to validate. And so many people just speak without any knowing of things, and they don't even question it. They're just programmed into that state. As you referenced, 3-letter organizations, furthermore, other programs to commandeer and manipulate your mind, like MK Ultra and other things of that nature. We are speaking on this. We're speaking on this. It's like, all thoughts of your mind are not yours. And people are like, well, whose are they if they're not mine? I'll give you an example. And a classic one, if I'm around someone and I actually want to participate in it, is I'll be like, no, they're not. Well, what do you mean? You're full of shit. And I'll go like this. And then they'll be like, well, what did you just do? Okay, I'm just going to ask you to think of something, anything. I don't care what it is. And they're like, okay, I did. I thought of something. And they'll have an image in their mind of an orange. And I'll be like, let me guess. It's an orange. They're like, what? How? Whoa. How did you know that? I had that thought. That's mine. That's my command of my mind. And then I go, take a look at this. And they'll look closer at my hand. And in small writing, beyond the sight of the naked eye, but working in your peripheral, is the word orange on my hand. And they go, holy shit. That's how quickly you can be commandeered on what you believe is your knowing or what you believe is your belief.
Yeah.
And understand that filter is happening all the time and instantly can be commandeered. So your fortification is critical.
Critical. It is what I find to be one of the biggest misconceptions about spiritual advancement or even self-progression, whatever you want to call it, is the inability to think and inability to process information in a coherent way. Meaning, most people they're not thinking for themselves, let alone are they actually even really there. And that gets into a whole other framework of being. But what I'm getting at here is it is critical and vital to the human experience to know how to be.
Discern and affirm the reality.
Because if you don't, someone else is going to. And your thoughts are not yours. The etheric field is wide open. Now, I always will lead with morals and ethics. I'm never going to tap into someone's field and not do no. Just because you can do something doesn't mean it should be done, right? But at the same time,
I will give you a caveat. Morals and ethics come from human condition. Human condition is a construct of man. That is not how universe operates in that currency. There is no moral compass. So be mindful that constructing the idea that you have a a moral or ethic is very much the mind prison of the human condition.
Okay, noted. Well, then let me reframe it this way. Okay, so to the spider, to the fly, the spider is the villain, right? But from the perspective of maybe the house, someone who owns the house, the spider could be a hero. So there's no good guys, there's no bad guys. There's just people with different intentions. So I could say my intention is that I move in this world that allows people to be more integrated within themselves. On one level, I could say it's morals. Another, I could say it's ethics. On another, I could say that's my intention, is that people have a more integrated experience where they feel as though they have more freedom within their own way of operating. But that, in order to get to that state of being, people have to realize in which the field that they find themselves in. And a lot of times we think that we're thinking for ourselves, but we're just regurgitating what he said, she said, and we haven't realized that that truth point is what I'm going to call that. From that truth point, we can have organic, original concepts and ideas and uniqueness. It's what gives humans their unique experience as San and not Krys, although San and Krys are ultimately the essence of the same, but to have the uniqueness of that experience as the persona, we have to arrive at a point where we can start to carry our own weight and not be influenced by the external to such a degree where we can't have a persona. You see what I'm saying? So it's again this in breath, out breath,
personality to unification.
Personality to unification, but people lose themselves where they are now part of a unification that is more a conglomeration versus the unification that you're talking about. They become a hive mind where everyone's saying the same thing that the news said. Everyone's saying the same thing that that spiritual teacher said or that guru said. At the end of the day, to be able to articulate one's presence from that 0 point that naturally gravitates to the same frequency as someone else, that's the real stuff. Versus, I said it because he said it. It's, I realized this within myself, but so did he, and so did she, and so did he, and so did she. And this is where the awakened souls start to realize that they are the same source, that the essence and the principle of reality that's moving through one is moving through all. So that was a yeah.
That brings us to just within Taoism, cast the wicked away and draw that person closer. Whatever evidence of identity, personality, this is very much the currency they operated until otherwise noted. You know what you know, you don't know what you don't know. And evidence of that will be clear. The lack of need of approval of any place, person, or thing will be self-realized.
Mm-hmm.
You will stay in that emotional state, which really I always tell people, remember, the currency is nothing more than a thought, feeling, and an emotion. They're the three recipes that are necessary to create all things that you can reflect on as the present moment, as the past or the future. This is the recipe. This is the very substance. Now, how do you make it realized so that this turns into wisdom, not an anchor of a belief system that is your emotional state? Right. So this is part of the cultivational practice. And that's like one of the first things I like to teach people. Your emotions don't control you, you control your emotions. Mm-hmm. This is like the infancy of your own realization. You must crawl before you walk, before you run. And normally, you know, I love it. You know, I've got people all over the world that master their emotional state, and they're like, you know, judges, physicists, light workers, energy workers, massage therapists, functional medicine doctors, MNDs. It doesn't matter. When you understand those fundamentals and you train in it, this brings us back to what I was speaking of, is evidence. You know, the idea, and really it is an idea, blind faith is such an interesting place to be, because I come into this and the spiritual teacher, he kind of looks like he's got the resume. He looks like it. He kind of talks like it. And I guess I'm going to believe. You must sit in the lotus position and be still for 6 months, eat no red meat, abstain from sex, do blah, 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 blah.
Mhm.
And then you do all that stuff and you come out of it and you're like, well, nothing happened. It's like, it's you. You have daddy issues. I mean, just nonsense, just
Yeah.
absolute nonsense. And what happens is I like to have people, through their own experience, measure this currency on a day-to-day basis. If I get you immersed in something like, for example, I created an actual app that does that. It has a digital revolution for yourself. You literally go from zero to a hero. There's over 2 years worth of training in there. The first 9 weeks is delivered everything anyone needs. If you're just someone who's just absolutely overwhelmed with this currency of reality, which is the human condition, you'll master your emotions in 9 weeks or less. And that is cheaper than 2 visits to a psychologist and furthermore getting nowhere. And you can never use that app again and walk away with a mastery of yourself because you're developing a skill that can be measured on a daily basis. So, for example, a session within that app would run you about 27 minutes. From that 27 minutes, once you finish that, you can then go into and use what I call the Easter egg, which will measure how much you have mastered of yourself within that time frame. Not, oh, do this for 6 months and maybe let's see what happens. No, it must be realized now.
Mm.
And that is so very important for everybody on their own journey because you go from a psycho to a psychic
Mm.
by being able to deliver these levels of sensory perception.
Yeah, so you can validate yourself, and because that's the only real validation we can ever have is the reflection of our own thoughts, deeds, and actions. Okay, do this, that happened. Okay, right. So that's a really cool
And
development.
most people freak out because, first of all, I commune with Lao Tzu. He developed this whole thing, and it has so many deep layers of development for someone who may be just on a humanistic journey of self-realization and mastering their emotions, or it starts from that to inquiry, to curiosity, to hope,
Mm.
to knowing, to belief system, to knowing. And for someone who's into developing their sensory perception, it's a magical mystery ride that just keeps building on itself, where all of a sudden you go, hang on a second, I just thought I couldn't experience energy any more than I am now, and it just went up 2 notches because you open up you blossom that lotus, and it just gets more and more expansive, as it should, because when I was in concert with him, he's transmuting it through me. It is an imprinted experience with an immortal. That's why I don't call it I may have used that title within the Apple app
Mhm.
thing or whatever, or what do you call it? The
Like,
Android.
yeah.
I used it as but it's not a meditation. It's an experience. That's why people do it. And they freak out because it's a transmission. You could be nobody and you hit play and you'll literally feel like you've had 10 pina coladas, a full body massage, and 10 days in the Bahamas. And you're like, holy shit, how is that possible? Because it's a visual, audible experience evoking a kinesthetic charge that makes it validated from brain to heart,
Mhm.
from mind to body, and
Yep.
then it becomes real.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. And on that note with the brain, you were talking about brainwaves earlier, and remember I had forgotten something.
Mhm.
Well, we retrained and we went back to that frequency, so it came back. But I was going to say that I don't think so. We know about beta, alpha, theta, delta, gamma brainwaves. I personally feel that there's more.
Oh,
Modern science is just they haven't gotten to the point where they can measure. Like if someone is really like, because you said you were measuring your brain waves when someone's in meditation or even doing things like levitating. I don't know what the brain waves. I would assume they're in delta and gamma, but I think that there's more that is not able to be measured through the instruments that we have. And I just think that just felt important to share.
yeah,
There's
it's a
more.
unification. I mean, you would say it's gamma, high gamma. Whether they use these Latin references or not. I mean, you go from gamma to high gamma to high lambda, And this would be more a confession from someone like a Wim Hof, who dives into submerging themselves into negative 30-degree water and swims through it and then merges out the other side. You would reference this imperium of your autonomic nervous system as the mastery, the now, the power. And you see this, and this is why the currency is so important, and that's why I love measuring it. Even within the app that was developed by Lao Tzu, is you can instantly acquire this frequency. You're exposed to it. And initially, when people are regulating their energy, because the first 9 weeks is regulating each energy center so that it is optimized. So this is not just, I'm sitting here having them. No, you're having an experience that is regulating your energy potential. And in the end, you have mastery to move your emotions like you move an icon on a computer screen at will, which is really more self-evidence of mastery. Now, you're not in denial by going, well, I'm angry, now I'm not. Yeah, no. Because no longer that's a frequency that you don't have to merge yourself with. When you understand how to do it, it's like, why wouldn't you do it?
It's a choice. It's a choice point.
It's a choice of the electromagnetism. And it's like, the more and more you gravitate and you resonate to that frequency, then it will be yours. It will be realized. This is this serendipitous, synchronistic moment that you and I have spoken of this whole conversation. And the more you admit it, the more you transmit it, it becomes realized.
And that exactly, and that goes back to the rainbow, right? You realize instead of anger is red, joy is blue, and they're two different things. It's part of the same spectrum that I can now choose to experience within the oneness, within the totality that is the field, that is the unification. So I think this is absolutely imperative for people to realize is that you are a interstellar, multidimensional, whatever soul. You are experiencing yourself. You're realizing yourself, but you're only going to experience the level of consciousness and the perceptions that you think. That's all you have access to. But you're not limited to that. As you're saying, we now have a choice. We can choose how to enter into different states of mind that then give us the validation of that experience, that then gives us that feedback to continue this greater Taurus field, right? This feedback loop. So absolutely profound. And you said you're in Nevada, San?
Yeah, I'm in Nevada.
I was, yes. Oh, okay. That's what, because you said you were friends with Sean, right? So I was over there. Yep. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, he's been down to the temple a couple of times.
Awesome.
Has a realization. He's in and out of many things. I think he had an epiphany when I took him to one of the altars. That was like, oh shit, I can feel all this. But the inquiry must be desirous.
It has to come.
It was more put him in a place of holy crap. Okay, that's enough for me now.
Well,
that's fine. That's a perfect place to be. And he's warmed over our friendship over a year and a couple of years now. And he changes how he perceives things. And that's through his own inquiry, his own development, his own skills. And I think that's a really amazing attribute as you go on your path. But no one can force feed you this stuff.
No. This is not something that can be controlled from the outside or given to you. It's something that naturally unfolds as the soul has experiences and then continues its own questioning. And no one knows somewhere in the Bible it says no one knows the day or the time that something, but basically you don't really ever know what's going to be the thing that sparks that inner question. And that's something I also want people to realize is that it's not a rush, but it is a choice. It's not a sprint, but it is a position that you choose to either experience or not. But it's here for all of us, the ether or the 0 point, however we want to call it, the source, whatever we want to dive into. It can't go anywhere. That's all that is giving rise to anything. So Yeah, I think that's a fun thing to be able to observe the different um, crests and troughs of the field and see where different people are and their experience. And often I see that what seems like opposites are just complements, right? So it's like the deepest and the darkest thing is really there to define the highest and most altruistic thing.
Well, I mean, it becomes more evident in the New Age spiritual, masculine and feminine.
Exactly.
I'm not a big buyer of this type of like terminology, nor are the seeds of two potential mind controllers, said evidence of Sigmund Freud. I mean Freud and Carl Jung, who
Yeah.
are two
Yeah.
guys that have propagated over time this information of how the mind works from a
Right.
psychological lens, and furthermore has evidence of some of their tools being used within three-letter organizations to develop skills. And furthermore, you create this thing that's very common these days, the shadow work that came from Carl Jung. I mean, it again implies that there is some type of negative frequency, and that's exactly where the listener or observer of said information will go, because they're programmed that way.
Mm, mm,
So
mhm.
this is sort of like understanding that the lens is yin and yang, not good and bad.
Exactly, and that's where I was getting. Yeah, that's what I was getting at is, and this is a perfect way to describe this point of yin and yang. I was driving, going to get groceries one day, and there was this guy behind me. Long story short, he didn't like how I was driving. It was literally totally fine. He was just having a bad day. So I go to park. He pulls up beside me. My whole drive there was happy. I was in a good mood. I was dancing in the car, listening to some music, just in my own energy. And I was met with this complete opposite energy coming from him. And so he parks. I go into the store, and I just felt inside me. I don't always do this, but whenever I feel the charge to go check in, I do. So I said, "Hey, is everything okay?" He's like, "Have you ever driven before?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Well, you suck." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." I'm like, I hope you have a better day." And he gives me the middle finger and walks off. And I felt no anger or resentment or charge or anything against him at all. What I realized though was because actually we started to run into each other at almost every single aisle I went, he was there. And so where a part of my mind personality would say, well, he's being rude, he's being mean, which on some level you could see that. Um, I saw that he was this other polarity of which the energy that I was in driving to the store, which some would say happy or in a good mood, which on some level, yes. But it's, for me, it turned into the totality of being, where it is this yin and yang principle, not good, not bad, not light, not dark, not evil, just being, the totality of the experience. So I think that, about sums it up. And I just wanted to share that. That was a cool experience of the.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'll give you one that I like. I'm Nothing is ever as it seems. So, I use this a lot, and a lot of people would perceive me as in my personality. Most of the time, I am never in my personality. Yet you can see it. I enjoy operating everywhere at once without any problems whatsoever. So, how could you be your personality and be of a divine source? Very, very easily, my friend.
Of course.
Once you replicate that frequency. So,
Yeah.
I was driving with my family, and I was driving sort of over the speed limit. I was probably 55 in a 65, and it happened to be a narrow road, and there was a cop on the other side of the street. My frequency is always high. It will give you two things self-evident from experiencing my presence. You will either be drawn to me or you'll hate me. That's part of the polarizing effect of electromagnetism. So this resonance will present itself to unify. And if there's any resistance you to where you are in your own frequency, it will come up as your emotional state, your mental state, how you perceive things. It's you that makes me feel this way. And it's sort of funny. So this cop runs the lights and then pulls me over. Now, immediately I ran his profile, and he was highly anxious, angry. There were a myriad of different emotional states. I had already engaged in the magic to regulate the frequency. By the time he got to the car, he had his hand on his holster. He's open the windows, open the windows. I've got my wife and 6 kids. And so my personality wasn't having that. I was like, okay, I'm in the process of healing you, and you present yourself as said asshole. That's okay. I will help you with this. So he put his hand in his gun, and he's like, open the windows, license and registration. I'm like, what are you stopping me for? And furthermore, why are you posing in a position where you want to shoot me and my family? And my wife's like, what are you doing? What are you doing? I'm not appreciating what you're putting out, my dear friend. And your anxiety, fear, and anger is not what I'm interested in entertaining. And he was just, give me a license or registration. Now, I'd already started the seed of the frequency before he even got out of his car. And to the mind-blowing, perplexing result of my wife and my kids, he came back with, here you go, sir. You have a beautiful family, and I'm sorry I pulled you over. Please don't do that again, and have a nice day.
Yeah.
And this is a mastery. This is a mastery of the now moment. And forget about what you think you see. It's what you know that will solidify the unification. And so what someone will see at face value would be me emerging in my personality, reacting, letting all the currency of electromagnetism affect my ability. No, I'd already started that seed of frequency. But what I did was, well, what is that? Is that a manipulation? No, all I'm doing is I'm sharing that frequency for his own healing. He walked away satisfied, whole, grounded. He went home to his family and had a nice meal and a dinner with his wife and kids, and he wasn't the angry, nasty, pissed off piece of shit that he was acting. People are like, whoa, that is mind-blowing. Well, welcome to my world. I might dance with that and throw in a little bit of Harry Potterism, but that's the power of what you do when you unify that frequency.
Right. That's awesome. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Yeah. And this is
the evidence of the now moment, but you cannot come from a place, person, or thing. And at face value, you're seeing something completely different than what I'm operating on. And I'll show you the evidence of it through the result. And that result was a complete transformation of this guy's mental, emotional state, which in turn will affect his physical state, that he'll get to live another day and won't have a stroke or a heart attack or some other thing that will be derived from the turmoil within his ecosystem that has manifest into a physicality.
Exactly.
So there's a moment of brief reprieve. He gets a chance to pause and potentially, dance with that frequency.
Yeah. And I think
awaken the true self.
Yes. And that's the beauty of it, isn't it? Is the sun doesn't shine really to do anything other than because that's what suns do. Suns just that's what they do. They shine. And to some, that sunlight is going to feel warm and nurturing, and it's going to help them elevate. And to others, it's going to feel like it's burning their skin based on the relationship to what that individual has with the energy coming from the sun. And I find that true of people who are doing this kind of work is if you're showing up in your authentic self, your presence alone will radiate, and it'll be felt by those who are able to perceive it and to furthermore assimilate that energy. And I think, it's a very noble thing. It's a very beautiful thing. So,
well, this has been absolutely refreshing, amazing, and real, recognized real, my dear friend.
Yes.
This is magnificent. What I want to do is all my students, disciples, 126 subscribers, I want you to go out and merge into the social sphere, the interweb of all the offerings of Krys, and furthermore explore that, whether it's group healings, teaching, cosmic frequency, all the things that you offer. And I will ask you, and that will be put under this interaction, this incredible communion that we're having right now, That will go under the podcast,
Mm-hmm.
and so everyone will know where to find you from, you know, all types of levels of social media. I'll ask you the final question. What is your definition of spiritual consciousness?
Man, what is my definition of spiritual consciousness? Something that someone has to answer for themselves. I can't answer. I can only answer for for me. And I guess on my own level would be the letting go of what you think you are, only to realize what you've always been. And that looks different for all of us.
That is absolutely beautiful. Hundreds of podcasts later, and I've never had the same answer, which is the way it should be, because that's consciousness, that's
Yeah,
spiritual consciousness.
that's it.
With that, I want to thank you for accepting my invitation and spending time here today. I feel like we're reuniting a bond and a relationship we've had for many lifetimes.
Yeah, yeah, I feel the same. I think this has been amazing. Usually my shows are, or the talks I do are an hour, hour and 20 minutes. So time wise, you know, we are kind of just beginning, but it just shows the amount of synchronicity, alignment, and frequency that was shared here today. I think um, people need to hear this kind of information. They really do. They need to realize that they have a choice, that they're powerful, and that, you know, they don't have to limit themselves anymore. So thank you, brother San. I do think that we've crossed paths, you know, many other times. I can feel it. There's other questions I'm sure are going to arise as we.
Well, we'll resume this conversation in the future for a part two. I believe it's necessary.
Yeah.
Thank you, my dear brother. I'm very grateful for you.
Yeah. Likewise.
And with that, I want to thank you. I want to thank the universe for bringing you into my life. I want to thank the audience for sharing their time with us today. I am your humble servant and seafood, Taoist Master San Qing, and I'll see you in the next one, guys.
All right, everyone. Peace.